Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. As you can tell, Captain Logan is not here. He was gonna be here. He and all three of us were actually going to sit down and do this video together, but he's been really busy lately. So instead of Captain Logan, it's me and Eric.
He could have been here, just you introducing him, or just being silent.
We could have actually. See, now I.
He could be here right now, and they don't even know.
What we should have done is found a video back when you and him were doing videos on your channel, where he says, "Hi, I'm Captain Logan."
Oh, and just splice it in?
Yeah, just splice it in, and he's quiet the whole rest of the video.
Or just use audio clips and piece together his part of the conversation.
Because he's done a general review of Skyfall before, and he's mentioned Casino and Quantum in sporadic videos.
Yeah, we could totally do it.
We need to get away with this.
like those awful commentaries on a lot of the. I was trying to listen to You Only Live Twice. You Only Live Twice is the single worst commentary I've ever tried to listen to.
Oh, I know, it's awful.
If people don't know, and I don't think all of the commentaries like that. Like, I know From Russia with Love isn't like that, but there's a guy who has the most monotone voice. He's like, I represent the Ian Fleming Foundation. Tonight, we're going to hear from various people that worked on the film, and then before someone talks, he always introduces them. He'll be like, Donald Pleasance was great in the role, and now to explain how Donald Pleasance was great in the role, here's the director. Like, it's awful.
I remember Thunderball being a little bit like that.
Is Thunderball like that too? I haven't.
See, I just really don't like that movie, so I haven't gone back to it. But I remember it being like that.
No one has anything interesting to say on James Bond commentaries. It's always very like movie commentaries. Like, it's about the actors, it's about the shooting. Nobody ever talks about like the story or the drawing, except for maybe On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the biggest underrated gems of the whole franchise, so I felt like it needed that in the comics.
Well, and it's one that's not it's not just like really close to the book, but it was intentionally really close to the book.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's lots of great articles and research out there about how they tried to stick everything from the book in there and the process of like storyboarding and stuff.
I don't have them because they're like $50. But there is like a definitive like production of book about On Her Majesty's Secret Service and the Living Daylights.
Oh, that's cool.
There's two different books. I think in the vein of those. Also, I don't have, because they're $50, the R.W. Rinsler Making of Star Wars books, which are apparently amazing.
Oh yeah, I've heard great things about that. I know a guy that has them in his own personal library. I've never been able to read them though.
I want them, but I can't justify $50.
No, neither can I. I mean, it's just a making of thing. I feel like you could easily find that somewhere online.
Well, apparently it gets really into the nitty-gritty. But anyways, we're not talking about that.
Yeah, anyway. So Eric and I are here to, as you can tell from the title and the opening of this conversation, talk about James Bond movies. More specifically, we're here to talk about the Daniel Craig James Bond movies. Now, just a little bit of a preface. Neither one of us has seen Spectre yet.
We're intentionally recording this before we see Spectre. Even if this comes out after Spectre's out or after you've seen Spectre, which it has to because it's 10 o'clock right now on Thursday, and my theater has already run 2 showings.
Yeah, so has mine, and if you go on Facebook, your status can have the option of celebrate Spectre's release.
Oh, really? What does that do?
Nothing. You just check a little box, and it says you're watching Spectre.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I have no idea why they did it for that, and not like the Peanuts or movie or anything like that.
Well, I was actually shocked. I was looking at some Skyfall stuff the other day. Skyfall outgrossed Rises. Dark Knight Rises.
Did it really?
Yep, I was looking at what year did it? It was 2012. I was looking at 2012 in film, and yeah, Skyfall outgrossed Dark Knight Rises that year. So
that's good because Skyfall is a much better movie about the exact same thing.
Yeah, no, it's a lot better movie. But we'll get to that when we talk about Skyfall.
Yeah,
but yeah. So I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal, and we'll talk about some of the production stuff and like the copyright stuff about Spectre and making Casino Royale and stuff like that here and there. But we don't want any spoilers for that movie as we talk about it because I think there's quite a bit of stuff I know that's going to get retconned later. Like I know a guy's already seen it, and I made some predictions with him, and everything I said came true, and I don't want to have any of the actual film's context tainting what I say here.
Well, and I don't know if we really want to do like a predictions because people have seen it by the time. Like I'll probably
Yeah.
have seen it by the time this video comes out.
Yeah, same here. So we won't do necessarily a predictions, but maybe just a little bit of discussion as to what that movie could address from these movies.
Yeah, the big thing from the Spectre trailer is that Mr. White's there and something's going on with Quantum.
Yeah, and we'll talk about my zero issue problem that I mention every time I talk about this. Okay, so we're doing the Craig movies, and in case you are not a James Bond person, you're just listening to this for the hell of it, that's Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, and Skyfall. And Eric, why don't we just go ahead and do like a really brief overview, which one's your favorite, and what you like most about it. Just out of curiosity, maybe we'll get it going. Then we'll do Casino Royale, then we'll talk about Quantum, then we'll talk about Skyfall, each separately.
Well, do you want to talk about how? Well, I guess we can talk about when we get to Casino Royale. I was gonna ask if you want to talk about how James Bond kind of had its Batman and Robin, and then had to reboot.
Yeah, I think we're just gonna talk all about that.
Okay, we'll talk about that when we get to Casino. Okay. Well, Skyfall's definitely my favorite.
Okay.
But Casino Royale is a really close second. There's just a couple of things at Casino Royale that, as time's gone on, have become like little nitpicks. And then I don't hate Quantum as much as everybody else, but it's the weakest of the three films.
Yeah, I hate Quantum.
Everyone does. Rewatching it for this, I was like, yeah, this isn't a very good movie, but it has some really interesting ideas. It might be one of the best examples. Like, I would show Quantum of Solace in film school, as this is what a first draft looks like. Because I guarantee you, if that film had, and we'll talk about it because it's part of that whole writer's strike thing.
Yeah, that's.
But I guarantee you, if that film had gotten a couple more drafts, like you would do on a normal film, I think that could have been an amazing movie. It has so many really good ideas there.
Well, it capitalizes on Casino Royale's themes so well. It just doesn't do anything with them.
Yeah, it's. I guess the majority of my like for that film was based on potential. Than anything else. But yeah, no, I love Skyfall. And we'll talk about rewatching it with the other two. I really don't like its placement within the films. I feel like it's really troubling as the third Daniel Craig film, but as a standalone film, I think it works brilliantly. It's easily the best Bond villain we've had since Alec Trevelyan. Would that be the last time we had well, and you hate GoldenEye.
I mean, I don't like GoldenEye. I would go far back to License to Kill, but yeah, 006 is pretty good, I guess. Well, I mean, it's Sean Bean.
Yeah.
It's hard to top that.
But he's it's got a great villain who has this really nihilistic motivation. Like, he is not motivated to rule the world, and he's also not the Joker. Like, he's not crazy and like, I just want to watch everything fall apart. He just has this really just almost like childish fixation on, I'm going to kill M. I'm going to make a big spectacle of it. Like, that is the end-all and be-all of his motivations and his plans. That's all he cares about. It's such a small, motivation on such a grand scale. I think that's really interesting. And I really like the themes and ideas that the film kind of goes into and plays with.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Part of what I love about that movie is that it's so much about mythology and the evolution of a character, and it's got a lot of meta commentary, which my favorite James Bond films always do.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Just like Spy Who Loved Me, when we get that opening teaser and Bond's jumping over the cliff, and that was a symbol for this way Eon Productions was in and how that movie saved them at the last possible minute.
And they made Moonraker.
Huh?
I said, and then they made Moonraker.
Yeah, and then they made Moonraker. And then there was View to Kill and Octopussy. Anyway.
It's crazy that is this the only film franchise that has stayed under one company for so long?
Yeah. I mean, Eon's been bought around randomly for a while, but it's always been Eon.
Yeah. Eon gets Eon is under various different companies, but Eon's always been control of James Bond, and I don't think there's another franchise like that.
Yeah, not to my knowledge.
That doesn't spin out of something else. Like, obviously, from now on, theoretically, Warner Brothers will always be in control of Batman because Warner Brothers owns Batman. Like it's different with Eon and James Bond.
Yeah, I mean, it went from United Artists to MGM, and I think that's really about the biggest change. I know Skyfall had like a Columbia credit, I think.
That's because MGM doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Like-
But I think Eon Pictures has definitely been the longest running for any movie franchise, and it's been over 50 years now, so that's probably a record for something.
Yeah. There are less. Well, you know what? Whatchamacallit? Oh no, that's an original property. I was going to say Godzilla. I was going to say because Godzilla has more films and has gone longer, but Toho made Godzilla. Like that's still not exactly the same.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I think my favorite, just to get back to this, I think my favorite's probably Skyfall. I think Skyfall's definitely the best.
You just told me Casino like 2 days ago.
No, I was about to say, I think because you convinced me a little bit, I think Skyfall's definitely the best, but I really like Casino Royale a lot.
No, it's great.
My big thing with Casino over Skyfall, though, is I just think Casino's more memorable. Like Skyfall's a better script, but Casino Royale's got so many moments that stick with me for years in a way Skyfall doesn't.
That's something that I'm going to be interested to see with Spectre.
Yeah.
If Skyfall matters at all. Because Skyfall doesn't make any reference to any of the quantum stuff or Vesper or any of that stuff. So I'm really interested to see if... Like, we know that Spectre takes place very quickly after Skyfall.
Right.
I'm interested to see if it factors in at all.
Well, I mean,
because I think that could work against it in the overall memory of the James Bond film franchise. Like, oh, that's the one that's not part of this story.
Yeah, no, that's definitely going to be interesting, especially when you get that line in the trailers, I'm the author of all your pain, and that's got to include Skyfall, because he's only been on 3 missions. That we know of, at least.
Yeah, I was going to say, we had that conversation about the possibility of there being a 6-year gap.
Yeah, and I guess we'll talk about that when we get to Skyfall.
But yeah, I'm interested to see, because I mean, to be fair, Goldfinger is also notably not part of the Spectre arc of those films.
Yeah, that's true, and they don't make reference to it later either.
Well, but it's remembered.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff in Skyfall that sticks with me. But you might be right. Maybe not as much as Casino Royale.
Well,
Casino Royale is a really important movie for me, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough. I guess the big thing that shifts Skyfall down for me is that the ending is exactly the same as Hard Target, and that bugs me to no end.
I've never seen Hard Target.
Okay, well, then we'll have to talk about that. Okay, we got that out of the way. I guess we can go ahead and just start talking about Casino first. So, Eric, you saw the 60s Casino Royale movie, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, and we talked about that a little bit, but just go ahead and brief the viewing public as to what it was like.
Don't watch it. It's really bad. I looked into it. It was poorly reviewed at the time. So it's, and if people don't know, it's a comedy. It thinks it's a parody. But I looked into it. Even at the time, it got really bad reviews. So it's not just like, oh, well, comedic sensibilities have dated, and I just don't get it. People didn't like it at the time. And on top of that, probably the jokes that did land have not aged well. And it also has had... Hold on, I'm going to pull up on Wiki. It has like 6 or 7 directors.
Wow.
No, it was a mess.
I mean, it always seemed like a mess.
Yeah. And I want to say there's stories about everyone just kind of like being high and goofing around. All right, let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 directors.
Wow.
One of them is uncredited though. But yeah, and from what I understand, like the directors like just directed like little chunks of it like by themselves, so it doesn't even flow well. And I saw this film years and years and years ago, probably right before Quantum of Solace came out. So it's been a while, but it's terrible. I would recommend it to no one. And what's really weird is on Austin Powers, they say that the film was a big inspiration. And I don't get it, because that first Austin Powers movie is completely on point.
Yeah.
If it was an inspiration, the only thing I can imagine is like, we're not going to do this. We're actually going to spoof James Bond.
It's like the whole Bryan Singer carrying around a picture of Nicolas Cage Superman saying, we're not doing that.
Yeah. We're not making this movie.
Although in their case, they also made a really bad movie.
Yeah.
So there's been quite a few attempts to make Casino Royale work on film. Like at one point, Quentin Tarantino really wanted to do an adaptation, and
the thing about it, I guess that people should know is, Casino Royale was not part of Eon's deal, so
right.
it was owned by a different studio, which is why there was a couple of times where it might have been made by someone. Like if Quentin Tarantino had done Casino Royale, it would not have been the first film in the new Bond franchise. It would have been like a standalone movie. I really wish we'd gotten it. What he said about it is that he was just going to straight up do the book, do it black and white, and do it period piece.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
Yeah, I really wish he'd made that movie, but
I'm not entirely sure about his style though, because you can't add profuse amounts of blood to that book, really.
I don't know if he would have.
It just doesn't feel like a Tarantino movie if that's not there.
No, it doesn't feel like a Tarantino movie, but I don't know. It sounds like it could have been really interesting.
Yeah.
There was a couple attempts to make Casino Royale. I'm actually really surprised that what's his name? Who's the guy that held up the James Bond franchise? What's that producer's name? The guy that
Broccoli?
No. The one that made Never Say Never Again.
Oh, well, McClory? Kevin McClory?
Yes, Kevin McClory. I'm really surprised Kevin McClory didn't try to buy the rights to Casino Royale. Then he would have had two to work with.
He didn't have a case. He tried to. There's actually a really good documentary called The Real Casino Royale that talks about some of that stuff later. And he attempted to do that because he wanted to expand on instead of just constantly remaking Thunderball. But that didn't work out because he had no case. They didn't know each other when that book was written.
No, I don't mean why he should have, I'm surprised he just didn't try to buy the rights.
Okay, no, that's fair.
I don't know why he would claim to get the rights to a book he had no involvement in.
No, that's a whole different story. But about Tarantino, he also wanted Pierce Brosnan for the role, weirdly enough.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know why.
I don't see Brosnan in period at all.
No, I don't see it. And the quote is he only wanted Pierce Brosnan. Like if you couldn't get him, he wasn't going to make the movie.
I mean, he is the only guy who got a good performance out of John Travolta ever, so...
That's fair, but Pierce Brosnan...
I like Face Off.
Yeah, no, that's weird. But Casino Royale's had a really bizarre history, and they were really excited about it when they finally got the rights back to make the movie. And how much of a gap was there between this and Die Another Day? Like 4 years?
Yeah, I think 4 years. Die Another Day was 02, 03, I think.
Yeah, I think it was 2002. So it wasn't a substantial gap, not as big as it was between GoldenEye and License to Kill.
Or even between Quantum and Skyfall.
Wasn't Quantum and Skyfall only 4 years?
It is only 4 years.
Yeah, because I remember Quantum coming out during the year of The Dark Knight.
Oh, yeah.
Dark Knight and Iron Man. I think that's partly why I hated it in theaters. It was the first James Bond movie I saw in theaters, and I also saw Dark Knight and Iron Man in theaters.
Quantum was your first James Bond movie in theaters?
In theaters, yes. I mean, I've seen all of them hundreds and hundreds of times on DVD and VHS and such, just never in theaters.
That's interesting. I think Casino was actually my first in theaters.
I wanted to see it. I just remember timings not working out, so I couldn't see it then.
Tomorrow Never Dies was my first new James Bond movie, but I don't think I saw it or any of the Brosnans in theaters. So yeah, I guess Casino is my first in theaters.
Okay, so we both got a connection to that. And you even mentioned that Casino Royale was part of the reason you became a James Bond fan again.
Oh yeah, Casino brought me back. I like all 12-year-old boys, I hated everything that I used to like because it wasn't cool.
Of course.
And I'd given up on James Bond. And I remember when Casino Royale, the advertisements were coming out, I scoffed and I rolled my eyes and I said, look, they've run out of ideas so much that they're just doing his origin story. And then I think I'd said this to my grandfather, who's the guy that got me into James Bond in the first place. And I think he's like, well, that's actually the first book. And for some reason, that intrigued me, and I went and I read Casino Royale, and I finished it the night before I went to see the movie, and I've just been a huge Bond fan since. But it's been super rooted in the books. Because like Casino Royale got me to read the book Casino Royale, which then got me to read all of the books. And I've since gone back and watched all of the movies. Because even before Casino Royale, I certainly hadn't seen all the films.
Right. No, neither did I at that point.
So yeah, Casino Royale is what made me a James Bond fan, really.
Yeah, and I guess that's also partly why you prefer Craig and Dalton so much, is because they're closer to the books. They're still not quite there, but they're closer.
Yeah, Dalton's the closest we've ever gotten to the books.
Yeah, he doesn't have the thing you mentioned before, though, of like having like the snooty British attitude.
Yeah, no, he lacks the snobbishness.
Yeah.
But yeah, because coming back to James Bond was so rooted in the books for me, that's really what I'm looking for. Is I'm looking for something that's as close to the books as possible.
Right. And I've always been on the opposite end of the spectrum, because my first Bond was Roger Moore, and I always want everything to be like that.
Well, as a kid, I really liked. It's weird because even as a child, Dalton was always my favorite.
Oh,
I don't know why, but even as a kid, he was my favorite. But as a kid, I didn't like Sean Connery because he didn't have gadgets.
Oh, that's interesting.
So yeah, for me as a kid, it was I liked Roger Moore and I liked Pierce Brosnan because they had all the cool gadgets.
See, I never liked Pierce Brosnan. Bless you.
Sorry.
I never liked Pierce Brosnan. Even as a kid, even with that cool remote control car, I still hated that actor.
That is my second favorite James Bond gadget. Well, my first one doesn't count because he doesn't use it. It's the Ghetto Blaster. Like, that's the coolest thing Q Branch ever invented. Was a rocket launcher boombox.
That was really cool. That's really cool. Yeah, Casino Royale was big for me because that was the first James Bond film, the first new one that my dad and I watched together. Because usually what it was is that he'd seen all of them, so he'd just periodically hand me a new DVD or VHS and tell me to watch it, and then ask him what I thought of it. And so the first time I ever actually sat down and watched a new movie with him together, where he had no idea what was into it, was Casino Royale. And it was the same time I think Rocky Balboa came out on DVD. So we watched both of those together, and that was interesting. But my dad hated Casino Royale, and I hated it because he hated it, but later realized that it was really, really good.
That's interesting. Why did your dad not like it? Was it just because he liked the Roger Moore kind of James Bonds?
He just can't stand Daniel Craig. He thinks the movie is good. It's just a matter of Daniel Craig not being the right actor. And that's still a problem for me. I still think Daniel Craig really lacks facial expression. The big problem being anytime a scene's supposed to be emotional or brutal or psychological, it's the directing and the script before it's Daniel Craig doing anything.
I don't know if I fully agree with you, but like I can certainly understand that. There's plenty of things that I've watched where I'm like, oh, if it just wasn't this actor, like they just kill this, or they weaken this.
Yeah, and then part of it's also that I started watching Angel around this time, and Alexis Denshoff was in the running to be James Bond before Daniel Craig, and that would have been so much better.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess I could see that.
Because he would have been a lot more like Dalton.
No, yeah, he would have. I don't know. I guess it's part of that. Like, I know he becomes super cool at the end of that show. I guess my first initial thought process was like, oh, but he's really dweeby.
But I mean, by the time you get to season 4, he's just awesome.
Well, and Clive Owen was also in the running, I believe. And
oh yeah,
I think he would have been a great Bond for this movie.
Yeah, I could see that. I know there was quite a few of people up for contention, and Pierce Brosnan wanted to be back, but didn't get it.
Yeah, I think he specifically said he wanted to do Casino Royale. Like, he didn't want to necessarily, like, keep going beyond that, but I think he wanted to do Casino Royale.
Yeah. And as far as younger, because after Martin Campbell got signed on to be director, the big 3 frontrunners were Henry Cavill, Sam Worthington, and what was the other guy? Dougray Scott.
Oh, really?
Yeah. All of them.
Thank God we dodged Sam Worthington.
Yeah, that would have been awful. But Henry Cavill was the only one that really had a chance. The problem was that he was too young. And now you watch Man from U.N.C.L.E. and he would be perfect.
Yeah, you know what? If he hadn't done Man from U.N.C.L.E., he might be the next James Bond, because there's a history of Eon saying, no, you're too young, and then coming back to them later.
Yeah, exactly. Which would be interesting. Because then imagine Superman and James Bond played by the same guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a long, complicated history as far as casting and producing this movie goes. And it's surprising that it came together so well by the end.
Yeah, well, and that it's a reboot. James Bond had never done that, and it was pretty trendy when it happened. Like I remember when they announced that like it was a reboot, and feeling like I remember like at that time feeling like everything was being rebooted.
Yeah, because we had Batman Begins just like right before this, I think.
Oh, Batman Begins is a huge influence on this movie.
Yeah.
It's very, very obvious that Batman Begins is a big influence. But the Casino Royale, like as a story, doesn't necessarily necessitate being. It didn't have to be a reboot. They could have done this without rebooting it.
Well, the movies are never bothered by the fact that like 20 years passed between Connery and Dalton, or like,
it's comic book time.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't really matter. And even though it's a reboot in my mind, I still kind of think, it's just a continuation, and it's all in the same canon. Although that would change if they use other villains.
Which is what I really want. Well, it has to change now because of Spectre.
Right.
If Spectre, if nothing else had, Spectre definitively makes this not be able to be canon with the other films.
Right.
But and that's my big thing is if this is a reboot, I want a reboot. Go and I bring back Scaramanga and Dr. No, and you don't have to specifically straight up remake those stories or those movies, but just make a movie where like there's an assassin and it's Scaramanga. Like why not?
Yeah. Moonraker. If they followed the book, I think that could be a really cool remake.
Oh, absolutely.
Because Drax is one of the best villains in the books.
And it's a really interesting plot.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have to be updated. Like, he wouldn't be making a rocket ship for England, but
yeah. I mean, I think that stuff's easy enough. But if you just keep the motivations and stuff right, it could make a fantastic film.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's interesting that they chose to reboot it, given how long it ran without rebooting.
Yeah, and I think to the general public, it didn't matter to them really.
The big weird thing, obviously, is M. That they rebooted, but they kept M, which I know. It feels like so long ago, but like I remember when Batman Begins came out, people thinking that it was a prequel to '89. Same thing with Casino Royale. Like I remember people not getting that it was a reboot. They're like, no, it's M. It's the same M. Like, and I'm like, but it's clearly the beginning.
Why did they keep Judi Dench, I wonder?
They liked her?
Yeah, but I mean, just considering clearly they were making a reboot, even if the public didn't get that. So it just felt like it was sending a mixed message by keeping her.
Yeah, I really don't know, and I've never thought she was particularly great in the part.
Neither did I.
Well, and to be fair, M is a really undemanding part.
Yeah.
She is distinctly different, which is interesting. It is a different M from the Brosnan films.
Yeah, and I feel like she's one of those characters that works best when we talk about all three of the films together, because she has a really interesting progress in relationship with Bond.
Yeah, because I really like her in Skyfall.
Yeah, me too.
And that retroactively makes me like her more in the previous two films.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with her trying to get rid of Bonzigo and making sure he doesn't kill himself all comes with a different meaning now that you know about Silva.
Oh, absolutely. And it really, I think without Skyfall, she seems really antagonistic.
Yeah.
And after Skyfall, it does feel not more playful, but more caring.
She's got... Because I remember a big complaint when this movie first came out was that M was too mother bearish, and now it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. At least with Skyfall, that's the point.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if they had that intention to begin with, but clearly Sam Mendes ran with it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because of Casino Royale, it now starts literally when he becomes an agent. Like she has that line where she's like, well, I made you an agent too quickly, and there is that kind of almost what do you call it? When you promote your friends, relatives, what is that called?
See, now I'm blanking. I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know. I know what you mean.
There's a specific word for it. But it almost feels kind of like that. Like she really believes in him, and maybe
Right.
she did promote him a little bit too early, because of some kind of connection or something.
Yeah, like she's clearly got a preference or a bias for Bond.
Yeah, which is really interesting, and it comes up in Quantum as well.
Yeah.
Which I didn't remember, because I remembered one of my issues with both Casino Royale and Quantum is that he goes rogue. What I didn't remember is that she still supports him when he goes rogue in Quantum.
Yeah, like he talks to her after he takes out all those agents in the hotel in Quantum.
Well, and there's a scene where she says, like, Bond has to be onto something. He wouldn't just be doing this, do not report where he is or something like that.
Yeah, and then again, all that going back to Skyfall and being on the chopping block because she has this history of letting Bond go rogue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is all really interesting. And I like that you mentioned that it opens with Bond becoming a 00. Because this is the first movie not to open with a gun barrel, but the way it introduces it is really cool.
I love the opening sequence.
I do too. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I've actually seen this with a couple of people who were like, is this movie a period piece? Is this whole movie in black and white? Because based just on the opening, it could be set in the 50s. Like, there's nothing that really distinguishes it as modern day, and I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I love the camera choice they do with both scenes. Like the stuff with him and the guy that he's confronting in the office, the whole scene being Bond sitting down, everything's really relaxed, everything's got a very intentional blandness, and then you keep intercutting to the scene where he's fighting the informant. And it's really grainy, it's really almost kind of 80s, and it's got this constant, almost Bourne Identity kind of schizophrenic vibe to it.
Oh, yeah, no, it's very clear that there's a distinguishment between the two kills, because in the present day scenes, the camera is not moving. Bond is in complete control of that situation entirely.
Yeah, and I mean, so much of that just goes to Bond's mind state throughout the movie. Like, he's got a calm demeanor, but in his head he has no idea who he is, and everything's just jumbling around and trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Which also goes into the song choice, because You Know My Name is a fantastic song, and the opening titles with the cards is just as good to get us a sense of who Daniel Craig's Bond is and how confused he is as a person.
Yeah, with Casino and Quantum back-to-back, we had two songs that did not use the title of the film.
Yes.
And I think You Know My Name has my favorite thing about a Bond song.
Oh, really?
Which is when they sound like they're just a catchy tune, but they're actually about the plot of the movie. And after you've watched the movie and you go back to the song, you're like, oh, it's totally about the movie.
Yeah.
Skyfall has that too.
Yeah, I love that about all the Craig films. I like the song for Quantum of Solace more than most people, though.
Oh, I can't stand it.
We'll have to talk about that, because I feel like part of the problem is the way they make the title sequence and not necessarily the song by itself.
No, I just don't like the song.
Okay, that's fair.
But I actually don't mind the title sequence. But with Casino Royale, what I love is that it is a song that is about the movie. But
Yeah, it's a song.
also a song about that it's a reboot. Like, it's like
Yeah.
the entire idea of You Know My Name is a really confident declaration of kind of still importance of the franchise. And I love that it has that kind of double level.
Yeah, and then you add into the factor of all the cards and the whole movie being about risk and reading people, but also the huge risk of rebooting a 50-year-old franchise.
Also, there's it really pulls away from the painted dancing naked women.
Yeah, which was getting really old.
Oh no, absolutely. And I mean, Die Another Day doesn't have that. Die Another Day has that weird music video, also part of the film thing.
The scorpions and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're just getting tortured.
Yeah, Die Another Day has just got a host of problems. I hate that movie.
Yeah, I do too.
It's easily the worst.
Well, I really don't like Diamonds Are Forever, but
Diamonds Are Forever is really boring. I
yeah,
can't stay awake.
which is to me the greatest crime a James Bond film can make. It's the same with Godzilla. I rank my Godzilla films on how bored I am watching them. But
that makes perfect sense. Before we get away from the song, I just want to mention, as far as title sequences go, just as far as animation, music aside, I think that Casino Royale's got the best animated sequence of the entire franchise.
probably, maybe Skyfall might be a close second, but yeah, no, it's great opening sequence.
The thing that always bugs me about James Bond title sequences is that they never do the obvious thing of just make every frame interconnect with each other. Like, don't break at all. And Casino Royale does it the most consistently, and I like that the whole thing's almost in silhouette, and they play up the trading card things with the gun. But I'd yet to see a Bond film where they just maintain a constant motion all the way through, kind of like a 60s movie.
Well, and one of the things I think is interesting about the opening, what do you call it? It's not the opening scene. The opening scene is the opening scene. Just the
teaser?
credits. No, I mean the song bit. Like, we keep calling it the opening scene. I guess the song bit.
Yeah, the whole title
the credits,
sequence, I guess.
Yeah, the title sequence. You know how, like, sometimes things will, like, slowly become popular and then they're everywhere and you get tired of it?
Yes.
I'm getting there with Art Deco. I love Art Deco, but now everyone's realized that they love Art Deco, and now Art Deco is just the thing we do. And this is really, like, this is before it got really popular. And I think that there's a lot of like theme songs for TV shows. I think that took. I mean, Mad Men is clearly on some level inspired by the Casino Royale theme.
Oh, it totally is. Did that show start before or after this, actually?
Oh, no, it's after. Mad Men's 2008, 2010?
Okay, I only ever watched the first couple seasons. It's good, I just got bored.
I really liked it, and then, like, something happened, like, I moved, and, like, I forgot to go back to it, and I keep meaning to go back to it, I just haven't gotten around to it.
Right. Yeah, me too at some point. But no, yeah, that's clearly inspired by this, and even the silhouette of Don Draper as he's falling looks a lot like the one we see here.
Yeah, and the season sets look like that too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
2007. That meant 07.
2007. Okay.
So next year, yeah.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
But yeah, no, I actually think Casino Royale was one of the first bigger things I saw use Art Deco right at the beginning of this, where, like, we realized that we really like Art Deco.
Yeah.
Now it's everywhere. It's like. Like we used to, like, have those, like, fan posters where they're, like, cool Art Deco things, and now that's just what we do for everything. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. But here it was before that, and I really like it.
Yeah, I mean, the art community's just got a whole thing about pushing back what modern art is and reusing things from the '60s. Everyone loves using Art Deco now. It's annoying.
Well, that, I mean, that's the big, I guess, the cycle, right? Like, Mad Men's part of that is that we've cycled around to everything from the 60s is cool now.
Yeah. I mean, just wait until we get back to 70s. Abstract object paintings and stuff. But anyway, one of the things I mentioned to you before when talking about these movies, and what bugs me about just the Spectre trailers, is that the Daniel Craig movies lack very much in any sort of visual style except for Casino Royale.
Really? Rewatching Skyfall, I was like, oh man, he's going to come back and totally say he was wrong, because this movie looks awesome.
Not really. Not to me.
I love that silhouette fight.
The silhouette fight's fantastic, but that's
how
about
they
it.
use glass and reflections.
I think part of it is that thing was too short. It could have been longer.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. But Casino Royale is definitely the best, and I know you really don't like the opening chase scene, but just on a technical level, it looks amazing.
I don't like it. I just think it's too long. And I understand why it's too long, because if I shot all of the things they shot, I'd be like, well, I can't cut a frame of this. This is all amazing.
Right.
I just think it's a tad too long. I think it should have been shorter. Everything they do is really impressive. I mean, and this is something that maybe since GoldenEye they'd really moved away from, that Bond films used to be famous for, which is if they wanted to do a stunt, they would go get the best person at whatever they wanted to do. And with GoldenEye, it was the they got like a really famous base jumper to do the not base jumper, bungee jumper to do
Yeah.
the jump at the beginning of that, and it's like a world record. This guy is one of the inventors of parkour. Like they wanted a really cool parkour scene, so they got the guy that made it. And so everything he does is really impressive. And there's that great contrast. My favorite, I think, of being when he jumps and goes through that tiny window, and Bond just busts through the wall.
Kool-Aid Man style, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And it's all great. I just think it's too long in the movie.
That's fair. I think by the time you get to the embassy, they're kind of stretching it. But to speak to the whole Bond just busting through the wall thing, I think part of why I like that scene so much is because it's very visually demonstrating to us that Bond is nothing but a blunt instrument.
Oh, absolutely. And I love when the guy throws the gun to him and he just catches it.
Yeah.
In pieces, there's nothing I don't like about the scene. I just think it's too long.
That's fair. And when this came out, was it not the longest Bond movie?
Longest what?
The longest runtime.
I think it's On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I might be wrong.
Is it On Her Majesty's Secret Service? I don't remember. I know I know Spectre just broke the record.
Oh, did it?
I think so. Yeah.
This is 44 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but maybe that's part of what it is that it's a lot longer than what we're used to, especially with the Brosnan movies. The Brosnan movies were pretty short.
Yeah.
So there's a whole generation of kids that grew up with shorter-esque Bond movies.
Well, Bond's one of those things that I feel like the length varies on how interested you are, or how long it feels. I really feel like James Bond movies have it is 4 minutes longer than On Her Majesty's.
Oh, okay, cool.
Bond movies have a wind chill factor, where I don't think On Her Majesty's Secret Service feels like the longest James Bond film before Casino Royale.
No, it certainly doesn't.
But Diamonds Are Forever feels like the longest James Bond movie.
And I've got the exact same thing with Octopussy and A View to Kill. Those movies feel like they take forever.
Oh yeah, A View to a Kill feels like it takes a long time.
Yeah, I mean, even the cool stunts are not worth it by the end. It just feels so long and boring.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think then I guess if that's true and this is 4 minutes longer, then I guess this is the longest movie at that point. And Skyfall I know is 1 minute shorter.
Skyfall is exactly 1 minute shorter according to Wikipedia. You are correct.
Okay.
I know that because I think is the shortest one, which is weird because it feels long. It's 106 minutes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I think it might be the shortest James Bond film period.
That's really short. Wow.
Yeah, it doesn't feel it.
It doesn't, no. I watched this movie and it feels like I'm just having a snack or something and there's more to watch. But with that, it feels like it takes much longer.
But I also think part of my problem with the opening chase is I think the reason it feels too long is that it is just the setup for the next part, which is also gonna lead into a long chase, which is then gonna get to the actual story of the film.
That's true. It's got kind of a long prologue.
Yeah, and I think that's part of my problem is that this feels like a prologue to the prologue, and so that's probably what maybe if this sequence had been. If somehow this sequence had been the chase through the airport, maybe it wouldn't have felt as long.
Yeah, I guess it kind of feels redundant now that we have the chase through the airport and this.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit too much at that point. And then I remember us talking, and you mentioned how, I guess we're skipping a little bit ahead, but that's okay, not a lot happens in between. But the chase through the airport has one of the weirdest cuts.
Oh, yeah. No, it's really weird. Because there actually is a little bit to talk about before we get to that.
Okay, cool.
Because we have the first chick Bond seduces, who will then end up dead.
Oh, yeah. The girl from the hotel.
Yeah, which is I think it's interesting that they rebooted it, and this film is very different. It still follows the standard Bond formula of in the first act, there will be a girl he will meet, and she will either die or betray him. And then the second act, we will meet the actual Bond girl for the movie.
Yeah.
So even though this feels so different, it is still within that Bond formula.
Yeah.
And there's something. Oh, and he gets his Aston Martin, which feels like, I remember it when I first saw Skyfall. I was like, oh yeah, he just happens to have the Aston Martin from Goldfinger, and I was like, oh, that's right, he gets the Aston Martin from Goldfinger in Casino Royale.
Yeah, there's a continuity to that, which is cool.
Yeah, there's a setup and payoff. Unlike M's apartment, which has no continuity across these movies.
It's always different. It's weird.
Also, her husband magically dies between movies as well.
Yeah, and I guess we could supposedly talk about that between the gap between Quantum and Skyfall, where that could have happened.
Yeah. But it's one of those weird things that they do where they just they throw out like a character thing that they kind of, I guess, have to rectify later. Not unlike in Goldeneye, M has kids. Like it's just like a character bit. So it, like, and so we see her with her husband. I don't even know if we see her husband. But
yeah, that's a good question. I don't remember off the top of my head.
But this is Bond going rogue. He's not even supposed to be in the Bahamas.
No, he's not. We're supposed to just follow him as he gets this bomber, but Bond just kind of goes AWOL about the whole thing afterwards, and he gets to Alex Demetrius.
Well, and we get this whole conversation between Bond and M that is about what he needs to be, which is essentially a thinking gun.
Yeah,
because like they have that conversation about like, well, I'm just supposed to be a blunt instrument, and she's like, yeah, but you should be able to figure out that killing a bomb maker doesn't get us the terrorists that employed the bomb makers.
Yeah, it brings up a really fascinating contradiction, because they're not supposed to question authority, yet at the same time they're supposed to use their own brain. Yeah,
they're supposed to, well, and also this is a. And when we get to the airport, this is a super post 9/11 James Bond.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Which I think is really interesting because it's British. I know 9/11 kind of affected the entire world on some level, but
well, to be fair, Britain had some terrorist attacks around the same period as well. Afterwards.
That's true. I think maybe. I think it's. Oh no! I think yeah. I was gonna say yeah. It's afterwards. It's. Because it's the year of Dark Knight. That's when the train bombings were.
Yeah, they had that, and India had some as well. Like, just basically all around the world between 2001 and 2007, there was a huge amount of them with similar motifs.
Yeah. But this is a very post 9/11 James Bond film.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because Skyfall is a very post WikiLeaks.
Post Snowden.
Is Skyfall post Snowden?
Yeah.
Okay, then yes, post Snowden. Yeah.
At least I think it's post Snowden. Because it addresses some of the same issues.
Yeah. It's a movie that is very. When it was released, it was very topical, which is something that the James Bond films largely have strayed away from a lot of times. Like even when you go back to.
Oh wait, I'm wrong. Snowden was 2013.
Okay, I didn't think it was post Snowden, but I was.
Okay, yeah, then it's definitely post WikiLeaks. It was just not post Snowden.
But even when you go back to the early James Bond films, they're very specifically not Russia.
Yeah,
it is Spectre. Even in the stories where in the books it was Russia, it's Spectre.
Although I think, interestingly, that's something the books bring up that the movies never do, which is, I think, to a point, Bond identifies with a communist manifesto before he identifies with capitalism and democracy.
Well, Bond's a nationalist, at least in the books. Bond.
Yeah, he's a nationalist, but very clearly he doesn't have the same kind of governmental worldview as the country he serves. He just does it because he has to.
Yeah. But I mean that's a thing in the books that I guess is never really in the movies, is that Bond is a nationalist. Like he's about England. And And I don't know. I guess that doesn't really come up in the movies. Of course, the
No.
movies also never bring up the St. George and the Dragon thing that's throughout all the books.
Yeah, they never bring that up, and we'll talk about it. But they changed Mathis, and they skipped the conversation from Casino Royale, which kind of made that book.
They skipped the best conversation from that book.
Yeah, they skipped arguably one of the best conversations in the whole series.
Although to be fair, they messed with Mathis, so
Yeah.
we'll get to that.
And Mathis actually used a quick line from that conversation in Quantum.
Does he?
Yeah, he talks about the heroes and villains getting all mixed up.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which has almost no context in that movie.
Although it's interesting because I think it feels like the kind of thing where you're like, well, now the heroes and villains are all mixed up. But like that's kind of how it was in the books in the 50s.
Yeah.
Which is,
I feel like that's something you could have potentially saved for Skyfall.
Well, I mean, they didn't know they were going to make Skyfall. There's a whole thing. Skyfall is not the intended sequel to Quantum of Solace, like, at all.
No, it's definitely not. But I just mean if they were going to skip the conversation for 2 movies in a row and they wanted to bring it in, Skyfall could have been an okay place.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But so I guess we have the and we also have we skipped Bond giving oral sex. That's like a big thing that
Yeah.
They cut the scene. The MPA forced them to cut the scene of his mouth coming up to her, so that the scene starts with him there, which is just a weird thing with PG-13 and movies in general. You are not allowed to show like women receiving pleasure. Like that's a thing.
The weird thing is that when this movie came out, I remember a lot of news stations reviewing the movie talking about how much it's about the attractiveness of Bond. Like, they fixated on the thing of Bond coming out of the water instead of a woman.
Yeah, he does. You know, I can kind of remember that, too. Yeah, he kind of does the Dr. No rising out of the water thing.
Yeah, he does.
I don't think it's about Bond's attractiveness.
It's not, but people seem to take that away from it. And I guess when you throw in that scene and they don't know about it...
yeah, I guess that scene out of context, him rising out of the water, I guess you could make that one.
I'm not sure if that was in the trailers, but it might have been if they were able to show it on a news station.
But yeah, so that's just like a weird thing about this movie is that they cut like 4 seconds of frame because it was deemed too provocative for a PG-13 film.
Which it wasn't really.
No.
We get the torture scene, and to be fair, the torture scene is not good. But if you can have that, you can have the other scene.
If you can have GoldenEye, you can have. I am shocked that they got away with what they got away with in GoldenEye.
That's fair, yeah. Especially with how PC that movie was trying to be.
Yeah. I don't know what's up with that. But
that's the biggest thing that bugs me about that movie is how PC it is.
Oh, it's incredibly PC. But anyways, so we have the scene, and there's it. I think this scene is more important than I don't know. I think this scene is really important because she refers to him as a bad man.
Right.
And I think that is something that changes over the film. I think he is someone that really doesn't care about civilian casualties at the beginning of this film. And I think that maybe changed a little bit at the end. But
I don't think he cares about... I'm not even sure if it's casualty as much as it's just a life for the sake of life. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a civilian or the bad guy. If pain is involved, he doesn't mind.
Yeah, well, and I mean, when she's found murdered, M's like, well, great, another person that's dead because of you.
Yeah.
He doesn't care. Like, he does not react.
Yeah, and to be fair, Quantum of Solace does pick up on that a little bit because Bond sort of has a touch of death in that movie, where everyone he comes into contact with for most of that movie ends up dying. Yeah. And his whole mission turns out to be just keep one person alive.
But so yeah, then we have the cut. That's the weirdest cut. Because he's in the Bahamas. She goes out of the room for a minute for something, and he gets on the phone. He's like, I need a champagne for one. He hangs up the phone, cuts to him. Is it entering an airport? Because if it is, that's even weirder.
Yeah, it isn't. It's like he's right outside the airport about to go in, I think.
Yeah, but it's not the Bahamas airport. It is the Miami airport.
Yes, so they skipped that whole plane ride.
And he left and came back. Yeah, no, it's a really weird cut because it is the Miami airport.
Yeah,
that the
it's
whole thing
bizarre.
goes down. And he tracks down the guy, and
Which is another really cool scene where they're fighting amongst the
dead
statues
bodies.
of people without skin.
Well, those aren't statues. That's the Living Body Museum.
Oh, okay.
That's a traveling exhibit. Those are real bodies.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. That's cool. But no, I think just symbolically that's really interesting, and the way they're able to shift around the knife is really cool.
Yeah, it's one of those weird James Bond things where like we just throw things in for. I mean, in this, I guess it kind of has context, but James Bond movies really like to like cut to like national events or things.
Yeah.
Like we have one in the beginning of Quantum where like it's cut with a horse race. In the beginning of Casino, they're watching something, I think.
They're watching like a mongoose and a snake fighting.
Oh yeah, I guess that's not really. James Bond movies have this weird. I think there's one Goldeneye too, where it's like here's this weird festival we found. We're just gonna film it while our movie's going on.
Oh yeah, doesn't Live and Let Die have that too? I think.
Because
That opens with that parade.
Thunderball. I think Thunderball might be the first one that does it.
It might be.
Because they have that whole like Festival of the Dead thing. But
right.
But yeah, like that's a thing about James Bond, and I guess this is kind of this movie's that.
Yeah, which is surprising because, like you said, it's a reboot, but there's lots of interesting references to the past of these movies.
Well, we haven't mentioned the writers. This is before James Bond got rebooted, and this is kind of crazy. I know The World Is Not Enough and Die Another Day was written by Purvis and Wade. I'm not sure about Tomorrow Never Dies. But anyways, the last couple of James Bond movies, the ones that failed, the ones that made us require a reboot, were written by Neil Purvis and Robert Wade.
Yeah.
And then when we rebooted, we kept them, but each movie has a different like writer. And the only thing that I can assume is that they get a real writer, a good writer, to write a draft or two of the script, and then Purvis and Wade like punch it up and make it more actiony and jokey.
Yeah, like they James Bondify it, and the intro writer comes up with the story itself.
Yeah, and with Spectre, the big thing was that they got rid of Purvis and Wade, and then they didn't like the script and brought Purvis and Wade back to punch it up.
Yeah, but they kept John Logan, who also did Skyfall.
Well, he wrote the first draft, and they didn't like it. Or there was that whole thing about it in the Sony leaked emails.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't like the third act, and so they brought Purvis and Wade back. But Purvis and Wade are consistent through all three of these films, and I guess I assume the main writer, because I've seen Purvis and Wade's other solo work, I assume each film has a different main writer.
Right.
Well,
the other guy who did this, Haggins, I think his name is, he also wrote Letters from Iwo Jima, Flags of Our Fathers, $1 Million Baby. Like, he's written good Oscar bait movies.
Oh yeah, same thing with Skyfall.
Yeah. Although he also wrote Terminator Salvation.
Yeah, I think that's one of those movies that probably had a couple of different writers, and like
Probably.
somebody got credited. Like I know that there's a whole thing about Catwoman where like one of the people credited was literally like 15 drafts before the movie. It's just that he wrote a script and they were like, she doesn't have superpowers. And he's like, Catwoman doesn't have superpowers. And they're like, but she did in the movie. And he's like, okay, I guess I'll give her superpowers. And then because he made that contribution to the script, his name is on the final film.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, so I feel like we're taking a really long time on just covering this movie. Well, I guess we had some preamble about just the franchise in general.
We did. We'll try to speed up a little bit. It'll get faster when we actually get to the whole poker game thing.
Yeah.
Which is almost next. We got to get to the train stuff with the Vespa.
Okay, well, wait. I have a question. Do you understand anything about economics?
Yes, I am an economics major.
I thought you were a philosophy major.
I am both.
I didn't even know you could do that.
I can. It's pretty awesome. And I'm also getting a master's in philosophy.
Okay, explain to me how you can play against the stock market. Because I don't understand how stocks dropping in this plane company would make other stocks go up? Or I don't understand how you could bet against stocks.
Okay, this is actually perfect, because what they do in this movie is part of the reason the 2008 financial crisis happened.
Oh, really?
Yes, which I didn't know until just now, because I'm actually taking a class on economic policy and financial crisis.
Cool.
So basically what Le Chiffre is doing, and they don't get super explicit about it, but the way he described it is basically how do you call it? It's a security agreement. It's a derivative, which basically means two parties agree to a certain transaction, and then another party can place a bet on that. And so just depending on what an exchange rate happens, whether or not the stock market goes up or down, someone's making a bet on what's going to happen. And if they win, they make a lot of money. If they lose a lot of money, but they only bet a small amount.
Is this legal, or is this like an illegal thing?
It's legal. It's been legal forever. The whole idea is that we keep a derivatives market because we want to keep mortgages and long-term loans off of a bank's account so a bank can lend more money. And the problem is that it's never been regulated. Bill Clinton, before he got out of office, signed a bill that destroyed any regulation you could have whatsoever on a derivative. And it got so crazy that before the 2008 financial crisis, everyone was making loans to subprime borrowers, people who couldn't pay it back. So people making money on derivatives were losing insane amounts of money or winning insane amounts of money that they could not collect.
Okay. All right. That makes more sense. I've never understood that plot point, and I never knew if it was bad writing or if I just didn't understand it.
No, it makes sense. And
Okay.
plus the fact that Le Chiffre is part of another organization just kind of brings a sly attention to the whole shadow banking system that got the thing started in the first place.
Yeah, are we to understand he is actually part of Quantum, or is Quantum just one of the many people he deals with?
I always thought he worked for Quantum, like he was their banker.
Well, he's the banker. He's like a massive criminal terrorist banker, and I'm still not sure if he is working for Quantum or if Quantum was just like one of his clients.
It might be one of his clients, because the guys who try to chop off his girlfriend's arm have nothing to do with Quantum.
Yeah, they're just criminals.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good question. I guess Quantum was just a client for them then.
I mean, or he's not. Like, I don't know. Because they kill him.
Yeah, they do. And I assume it's the same reason the other guys wanted to kill him, which is just he was part of an intermediate transaction and he couldn't hold up his bargain.
Well, he knows that they exist. I think that's what it is. I think that's why they kill him. Is that if he gets caught, he can talk and nobody even knows they exist. Yeah,
which is all the way there until Quantum Solace.
Yeah. And they talk about that in Quantum Solace.
Yeah.
There's a really cool little scene in the beginning of Quantum Solace. But so after all of this, after all the explosions and everything, the book
But you're not
starts.
in the book.
Yeah, the book begins. In the book, he's just it's the mafia, right? Like, it's the same idea that he's a banker, but it's just like for the mafia, I think.
Yeah, and Smersh comes in as a later thing by the end of it.
Yeah. But this is we get this it's a little thing, but I want to talk about it. When this movie came out, everyone talked about how there were no gadgets in this movie whatsoever. And I don't think that's true.
I mean, do you have a defibrillator in your car?
I don't have a defibrillator in my car, and I also don't have tracking chips injected into me so that people can find me.
Yeah, exactly. That's a gadget as far as I'm concerned.
I just think technology has advanced to the point where really cool gadgets are just standard fare for realistic action movies.
If you want a cool gadget, quote unquote, then you have to go unpractical.
Yeah, I think what people mean by there's no gadgets is, well, nothing is disguised as something else.
Yeah.
The defibrillator was not disguised as a toothbrush.
Yeah, exactly.
What if it was a hot plate? This hot plate is actually a defibrillator.
Yeah, no, but there's clearly gadgets in this movie. It's just it's a subtler thing than it used to be.
Yeah, and I think a more realistic thing. Although, to be fair, recently there were unclassified documents from the British Secret Service that they totally did use things that were other things.
Yeah, and I mean, if you go to the Spy Museum, they also had that here.
Yeah, which is awesome. And
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if that was one of those things where like they saw James Bond movies and they were like, oh yeah, we should do that. Kind of like how the Mafia went and saw The Godfather and was like, oh, that's how we should conduct business.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic.
But I think a really important thing, which I guess is weird now because like it's not a big deal now because we get it later, but there is no Moneypenny, there is no Q.
Yeah.
There's not even a mention of Q Branch.
There's not. And we also don't have that classic go into M's office to get you his mission kind of opening.
We don't ever get that until the end of Skyfall, do we?
No, we don't. The end of Skyfall is the first time we get it, and they recreate almost the exact room we got in the original movies.
Yeah, it's definitely at least the doors.
Yeah.
Because those are the exact same doors.
Yeah.
But so, we like very notably those things are absent, which is part of the shift kind of towards the books because Q doesn't exist in the books. There's Major Boothroyd, and he shows up occasionally, and there's a Q Branch, but
yeah, there's no Q person that quips with him and gives him gadgets.
Yeah, he doesn't even really have gadgets in the.
No, he doesn't. He's got things here and there, like maybe a new gun or a new car or something.
Well,
like
the new gun is the big one. The new gun
Yeah.
is Dr. No, and I think he does have stuff in From Russia with Love. I think he does.
Does
I think the attaché case does have some of the stuff from the movie.
Okay, I don't remember.
I
It's been a
can't-
long time since I've read that.
I can't remember, but I think it does have some of the hidden stuff, like the knife. Although it should be noted, Casino Royale actually does have a lot of gadgets in the book. There's a never used knife in the shoe, which I think is really. I've always thought that was really weird. Oh no, is it the shoe or is it his hat?
It's the shoe, I think.
Okay, Lashif has a hidden blade that never comes up in the book.
Yeah.
And there's the guy with the gun and the walking stick.
Yeah.
And Casino Royale might have the most gadgets of any James Bond book.
Yeah.
Bond doesn't have them, but we are sans all of, and Moneypenny is a much lesser character in the books too.
Oh yeah, she is barely worth noting, and it's weird that she became so big in the movies.
Yeah, like I'm rereading Thunderball in preparation for Spectre, because that's really the only book Spectre shows up in.
Right.
And there's a sequence where he mentions that Moneypenny is jealous of his secretary because she likes him, and that Moneypenny is very attractive, and like that's it. That is the only. There's no flirting. There's no. But this movie doesn't have that.
No, it doesn't.
And I remember people talking about this when it came out. There's no gadgets. There's no Moneypenny. There's no Q. And I think that's interesting. We do eventually get it, and I wonder if we would have if the stuff didn't happen after Quantum of Solace that happened after Quantum of Solace.
Yeah. And to the best of their ability, they make it feel organic in Skyfall, so it's a little bit more okay. But people were outraged for some reason that he never says, "My name is Bond, James Bond" in Quantum of Solace.
There's a lot of stuff in this movie that people were really upset by. Where, as somebody who had just discovered the books, I was like, this makes complete sense. None of that stuff is in the books. Why should it be in this movie? But people were really like, where's Moneypenny?
Yeah, and I mean, I used to be one of those people when I first saw it, because it just didn't feel like the James Bond movies I grew up with, but I was a stupid kid, and I grew out of it.
Well, and I mean, I think that's the difference between, I think a lot of people, is that for me, I've because of how I came to this franchise, it is a literary franchise that is being adapted, whereas for most people, it's just a long-running film franchise, and I think Roger Moore is probably most people's James Bond. Like, everyone will say that Sean Connery is the best, but I think most people grew up with Roger Moore, and they're easily the most child-appropriate of the films, so I think that's where a lot of people see those movies.
And the nostalgia they pretend to attach to Connery usually comes from Roger Moore.
Yeah,
like a lot of the things people claim they loved about Sean Connery was mostly Roger Moore stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And Roger Moore, I think, is I mean, that's where all of the I don't want to call these movies campy. I don't think these movies are campy. They're jokey. And I think when people think of those things, like that's like Roger Moore's films defined the whole franchise in a way, at least in people's minds. And I remember people really didn't like Casino Royale because they felt like it was too dark for the franchise in general. And I think that really comes from that Roger Moore era.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, we do realize that the movies and the books have become such separate animals that you're never going to be able to do one thing perfectly. You can never exactly get the books again, and you can never exactly get what Roger Moore was doing again. And everything we've gotten since Roger Moore has been like a weird mix of the both.
Well, I mean, if the films had ended with Connery, I think James Bond at this point might be almost like a Sherlock Holmesian figure, where like there were a lot of different adaptations, and we've done stuff really close to the book, and we've done stuff really far away from the book. But because it like I can love the books as much as I love them, for the majority of people, James Bond is a film franchise. Right. And so even though in the original source material it didn't have all these things that people generally associate with that franchise, people still expect them to be there.
Yeah, it's been in the public consciousness way too long at that point.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you go backwards in Batman comics and you're like, so Commissioner Gordon just kind of like stands around? Like
there's no Alfred?
Yeah. Well, specifically, yeah, in the Golden Age, there's no Alfred.
Yeah, and he's just a bumbling detective that tries to figure out who Batman is.
But kind of anything before year one, like with Gordon, it's really weird.
Yeah.
Everything I think of as Gordon kind of comes from year one forward.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good comparison.
So like, and this just happens with franchises, but I think it's really interesting that, and I wonder now, I don't ever hear anybody saying that about Casino Royale now. Maybe it's because they do eventually get Moneypenny and Q and a radio.
And I mean, part of it's just the adjustment. Like the movies did really well, even if they were being so separate from the old
Casino Royale did great critically and commercially.
Yeah, like everyone loved it, even if there was nitpicks like that. Like you could be a purist for the Roger Moore stuff all you want, but too many people still loved Casino Royale.
Well, and it is interesting that I do remember hearing complaints from people that it was too dark, but everyone seemed to go see it. Like people liked it.
Yeah, I mean, even later, like the DVD sales for this were pretty high.
That doesn't surprise me.
But anyway, we should keep going. We don't want to spend the whole video on Casino.
Yeah. Well,
so next we get Vespa, right, in the train?
Yes.
Okay.
With one of my favorite awful product placement pieces.
Oh, with the watch?
Yeah, which doesn't bother me in the slightest, and I hate when people complain about it. Because it is the most obvious, like, oh, is that Rolex? He's like, no, it's
Omega.
He's like, no, it's an Omega. And like people really, I've seen people really dog on that. And it is awful product placement, but the reason it doesn't bother me, and the reason product placement never bothers me in James Bond, Ian Fleming did that stuff all the time.
Yes,
and
he did.
It was never product placement. He was just like, James Bond's super cultured, and he drinks this brand of wine, and he smokes this brand of cigarettes, and he drives this type of car. And so, like, product placement never bothers me in James Bond.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, I like the thing in the movie just beyond the product placement thing, because it's about these two characters trying to read each other.
Yeah, I don't know if the watch actually plays into that.
I mean, a little bit. Like, because she's trying to put on a little bit more of a,
Or does she say something about his watch?
She mentions the watch, and then she goes on a little bit of a tangent about what kind of person he is, just based on the things he wears and the way he looks.
Yeah. That's when they do their comparing their they basically do psych evaluations on each other.
Yeah. Which this and this is where everyone hates me, because I don't like Vespa.
At all? Or just the scene?
Not at all. I don't like the scene very much. Eva Green does nothing for me. Like, she's attractive and she's a good actress and the character's fine, but I don't get the over-the-moon appreciation of her.
I love Green.
And the psych evals they have on each other are really basic, boring stuff. Like, you take Psych 101 and that's what they teach you. It's not a miraculous thing, which is a big problem with this movie, where it thinks it's smarter than it is about poker and about reading people.
Um,
Like
I
you can
I've
just have a
always
conversation
thought
with someone and know whether or not they had those issues.
I've always thought hers felt like her jumping to conclusions based on nothing.
Yeah, that's a little
Well,
bit.
they both do because they don't have a conversation with each other. Like they don't have anything to base on. But I give it to James Bond because he's supposed to be able to read people. I've always felt like hers was just one of those things like, oh look, she's as good as he is. Um, I've always felt this scene was kind of a little weak. Um,
Yeah, because it's just so generic. Like it's just you want her to feel cool, so you give her something to say, and it doesn't really come from a character place.
yeah,
Because I mean, yeah, she works for Quantum because her boyfriend or husband gets kidnapped, but she's not a secret agent. She's a treasurer.
yeah. Which is there is this weird line where she's like even accountants have imagination. And I was like, you're drop dead gorgeous. Like no one would assume like, oh well, you're an accountant. You don't have a life.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's just the thing with Vespa in this movie where she just gets really weird lines to say or exists because the movie thinks the audience is dumb.
Well, that
Like
happens.
she has to be dumb as bricks about poker so we can get all those dumb lines later.
Yeah, but I almost feel like when I watch the movie, those scenes don't exist. Like those scenes are like weird like things that were inserted. They don't exist in the movie. It's like the musical number in the special editions for Return of the Jedi. That scene doesn't exist in the movie. It's just for some reason spliced in. Like I don't know. I don't like I literally don't even think of those scenes as part of the movie. Like I never even thought about like, oh, she's really dumb and needs these things explained to her. I always felt like those scenes might as well have had Mathis staring at the camera. Like I never even thought about how they reflect on her as a character. I was always like, well, these are here because people are stupid.
That's fair. But that's my thing with that character is that she does really interesting stuff throughout the movie, but it's always intercut with her being a moron.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never felt like that way. I think she's one of the best Bond girls.
Oh, she absolutely is. It's just little things that bug me about it because this is still a great movie, but it's one of those things where if you complain about a minor thing, it's because the rest of the movie's so good.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, the poker thing. The poker thing might be the thing
That's the biggest.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing in this movie because like I don't love this scene in the train, but like it doesn't bother me.
Right.
Poker scenes, I like grind my teeth when I watch the movie. Ever.
Oh, I know. I hate them. The poker is absolutely the worst part of this movie. And it almost feels like the movie itself, the director didn't know how to play poker in parts.
Yeah, or somebody like I don't even know if it was the director. Like I wonder if like there was like a producer that like wandered on set and was like, I understand what's going on. If I don't understand what's going on, no one will understand what's going on. You really need to have some scenes where you explain what's going on.
Well, it's really bizarre because you go back later when Bond is playing with Alex on the table, and the dealer sees 3 aces and she calls it trip aces, but that's a set. A poker dealer would not call that trip aces.
well, this is one of the things with this movie is they explain everything you don't need explained to you,
Yes.
and not the things that are important. And the reason is because clearly the filmmaker understands you'll just get it. When everyone goes, oh, they know that they have a better hand.
Yeah.
You don't, but for some, and it's the one, it's the tell. That's the conversation on like every single person on the planet knows what a tell is.
And Mathis has to be like, that's the tell.
It's the tell. It means he's bluffing. And I have heard people who play poker say that like, oh, these aren't even really good hands or whatever. I don't care. I don't know.
Well, okay. Well, I'll just bring that up quickly because part of my issue is the whole conversation with Vespa and stuff we get in between the poker game. It's about Bond being able to read Le Chiffre. It's about Bond separating himself to play the other person across the table, which is fine, which is interesting. The problem is every hand Le Chiffre and Bond get has nothing to do with reading the person. It's all about if you have any brains at all, you would either fold or play those cards. It's all about luck. They don't give them any hands that require any thought.
That's fair. And they are all like they are all something. Like, there was never a hand that's just one with, like, I have 2 twos. Well, no, there are no hands like that. I was going to say, well, there is one, but there isn't.
Yeah.
And...
Like, there's nothing immediately interesting or psychologically superior about Bond or Lashif because they have these 2 really great hands. Why not play them?
But I don't... But that's the kind of thing where, like, I feel like it doesn't really matter. It's, like, it is the information being conveyed to the audience that's important. Which is why I don't understand why it's not just Baccarat.
Yes.
Aside from the fact that I feel like it's easier to explain, the hands aren't important.
Yeah.
Like that's not the important part of this movie or this scene. It is the information that the hands convey. It really doesn't matter what Bond's hand is. It's that he loses, and then it's that he wins. So it's so to like give the audience this information that they don't need and probably already know, and then not give information that I feel like if you actually cared about the poker game, you would need, because that final reveal where they go like it's almost comedic, the way that they reveal like I have this and that means I win. Well, I have it's like a Yu-Gi-Oh game.
It's exactly like a Yu-Gi-Oh game. That's perfect. Yeah.
It is so specifically set up so that those hands can build on each other, and thank God that they build on each other, and we didn't get like Lashif before the black guy, because then he would have been like, oh man, I thought I had a good hand.
Yeah, and I mean, part of the problem is the way the movie's edited around the poker scenes, because initially. The basic thing is, fine, we explain what a tell is, but all the interesting stuff is the character motivations and Bond being poisoned and all that stuff, and the game doesn't matter. Then you randomly shift focus to look at how exciting these single card draws are, as opposed to the character stuff around it. Like, they needed to pick one. Was it about the game, or was it about the stuff around the game?
Well, and it's never about the game in James Bond movies. Like,
no,
when,
it's not.
when James is playing Largo and Thunderball, like, again, the cards, the numbers on the cards are not important. What is important is who is winning that hand, who is in control, who's risking and gaining for the risk. Just cinematic language-wise, I don't understand how they choose to use this poker game.
Yeah,
or present
it,
not
just
use
been
it. I get how they use it. It's how they present it.
Yeah, like you said, they should have just used Baccarat. If you go read the Casino Royale novel, or you look up any history of the movie or the book, and someone explains Baccarat to you, it will only take you 30 seconds to figure it out. It's not a complicated game.
It's like 21, except you're trying to get to 9, and if you go over 9, it circles around. So if you have 12, it's 2. There you go. You understand how to play Baccarat. Oh, and all face cards are 10. I think it's 10. It might be 11.
Yeah, I don't remember. It's been a while since.
It doesn't matter. It's really simple, and I feel like that's way easier for an audience to understand. It's like,
it absolutely
he has 9, he has 7.
Yeah, and I mean the book does a really good job of explaining why that creates more tension than just a standard poker game.
Yeah, and it's really only you could take it's like a paragraph where he explains it. And just put that in the movie. Like, it would take all of 30 seconds for him to explain, this is why I'm good at this. It's not about this. It's this, and this is these are all the details. I don't know. I think it's the weakest part of the film is how they treat all of this. So I don't know.
It's absolutely the weakest.
I love all the stuff around it. I love the fight with is he Somalian?
I don't remember. It's from the same country that we opened Lashif with.
Yeah. Lashif owes them money, which, by the way, I'm going to draw a line in the sand right now. Being a girl in a James Bond movie does not make you a Bond girl. I remember when this came out, everyone said that Lashif's girlfriend was a Bond girl. She is not.
No, she's
a Bond
not. She gets like 2 lines.
Yeah, no, not a Bond girl.
The woman he seduces at first is barely a Bond girl.
Yeah. I might at least give it to her. I didn't see her in any interviews. I didn't see things talking about her being a Bond girl, but she's more of a Bond girl than. Well,
does she even have a single scene with Bond?
He sends her out of the room or something, right? When the guy tries to cut off Lucien's hand.
Maybe, I don't remember. But like they never like talk to each other.
Oh no, not at all. They like maybe have screen time together. I'm not saying that they have a scene.
Yeah.
Which I actually really like this. This is something that I think is really well done with the Sheaf is when he goes to cut her hand off, and Lashif doesn't even try to stop it.
Yeah. Although it leads to the dumb line of you need two hands to play poker, which you don't.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, it might be slightly more difficult, but...
Maybe. It would take you longer to push your chips in any given direction, but that's about it.
Well, and you can't hold your hand, look at it, and pick a card up. You'd have to put your hand down and pull a card, and then...
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, you don't need two hands to play poker. But I think there's this really interesting thing with Lashif, that Lashif is all business, and he understands he screwed this guy over, and, like, a penance is kind of due. He doesn't even try to stop it.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And what's the name of the actor?
Oh, the Lashif guy?
Yeah, Lashif guy. The guy that everyone wants to be Dr. Doom.
Oh, really? That's actually really... It's Mad Mikkelsen.
Mad Nicholson, there we go.
Yes, he's Hannibal.
Yeah, he's Hannibal, and he's going to be in Star Wars Rogue One.
Oh!
Yeah.
Good guy.
Hopefully. But yeah, no, he's fantastic in that scene. And just throughout the movie, when you get the thing with like his bloody teardrop, and being desperate when he's torturing Bond, he's the best part of that torture scene.
Oh, absolutely. He's great. And I assumed that he was going to be like one of those guys that like would play a Bond villain and then I would never see again.
Yeah.
And he's great on Hannibal too.
Yeah, he's fantastic in that. And I know people want him to replace Craig, which I know will never happen, but I
don't want him to replace Craig. He's got too thick of an accent.
I've never actually heard him speak outside of a movie role, so I don't know.
Oh well, just in Hannibal, sometimes I'm like, what did he say?
Okay.
And this is the weird thing with everybody's like casting Bond. He's too old to start playing James Bond. It's my issue with Idris Elba. I love Idris Elba. I think he'd make a great James Bond. He's too old to start being James Bond. If you want to make one James Bond movie with Idris Elba, great. But yeah, I really like how he plays in the scene, and he's a guy that's really smarmy.
Oh yeah, definitely.
No matter how out of control like everything is, he always acts like he is in complete control.
Yeah, and I mean the movie's definitely about that. The movie's about how much things are in your favor or not, and how much things are in flux. And this is a guy that either can't handle it or isn't able to show it in any sort of expression. Like he's so devoid of just basic human understanding in that way.
Which I guess is kind of the interesting contrast to Bond is, you know, that Bond is kind of it's weird because Bond's very cold, but his problem is that he's emotional.
Yes.
And Lashif kind of has the same thing. He's cold and calculating, but like he's very like spur of the moment kind of a thinker.
Yeah, and again, both of them have an ego thing, and
absolutely, yeah.
And both of them are unable to see themselves as anything except the hero of their own story, which is interesting, especially when you get to the end with the torture scene. And part of why I wish they kept that conversation from the book about the heroes and the villains.
Well, and these are two people who cannot begin to see the outcome where they lose.
Yes.
They are both sure that they're going to win. Which, I mean, it's a thing in the book too. I really wish somebody else won. Just neither of them. Just
the Asian dude with the long hair just wins.
Yeah. Which apparently all of them are professional poker players. Like they're
Are they really? That's cool.
Yeah. I don't know why. Like, unlike casting the guy that invented parkour for your parkour scene, I don't know why you needed professional poker players, but apparently they are like really big deal poker players.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. But so I don't know. Is there really much? Well, I guess there's. So this is really where the editing for the game is weird.
Yeah.
Is they return after Bond stops the black guy from killing him, and then murders the black guy, and Vespa is there, and she helps, right? Is she strangling him?
She pulls the gun out of his hand so Bond can kill him.
Yes, yes. And then they go back to the casino or to the poker table, and then it cuts and says we'll resume in 5 hours or something.
Yeah.
And then he goes back to the hotel room to where Vespa. It's a great scene when he goes back. I just don't know why it's cut like this.
Yeah, and then a little bit later, when Bond gets poisoned, then he finally gets back to the table, and the announcer's like, "Let's continue," and then they cut.
Yeah, yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah,
but
I just wish that if there's more footage to that poker stuff, if you just rearrange some of the scenes, it would solve a lot of the problems.
Well, and the thing that's weird with Vesper is I want to say it's like a 6-hour break or something.
I think so, yeah.
What was
4 or 6 hours, something in between. It's there was a joke about it because it reminded them of that poker show that's on Spike TV.
Oh, okay. But so they go and they have this thing that takes maybe 15 minutes. What is Bond doing for the next however many hours while Vesper's sitting? How long has she been in that shower?
That's a good question.
But that's a great scene. I think that's just, it's such a, and it's not a scene that is in the books.
No, it's not. But it really helps. It really helps understand what's going through Bond's head and Vespa's, and why these two characters work with each other, and why they get each other.
Right. And from what I understand, Craig had to fight for something with that scene.
Oh, did he? Okay.
I want to say he had to fight for their clothes being on. Like she would have been in underwear or something. Like he fought to keep it as non-sexual as possible.
Which I think helps, because it's all about the facades fading. So if the clothes are on, it makes a better statement.
Absolutely. It's not Bond trying to get with this girl. It's a genuine moment of connection.
Right, exactly. And that's where I start to enjoy Vespa as a character. Because I didn't like her introduction, but this is where she finally becomes legitimately an interesting character.
Yeah. Well,
and she has those great lines as well about like the blood not coming off her hands.
I think that one's a little on the nose and obvious, but it works.
Yeah, I mean, it works because we see so many shots of Bond with bloody hands throughout the movie, so I just think it's fun to call attention to it.
Well, and I've never killed someone or witnessed someone being killed, so maybe that is like kind of a generic, or not generic. Maybe that's a trope for a reason. It feels like the blood won't come off. Maybe it really does feel like that. I don't know.
Neither one of us has been in that situation.
Well, I'm not sure about you, but I can only speak for myself.
I haven't, for sure.
But and then she's got that killer dress.
Yeah.
And then, like, I guess the poker game ends. Like Bond. Well, I guess Bond loses first. I guess that's the big thing is Bond loses, and she will not buy him back in.
Yeah. So he wants to kill the chief, and that's when we get Leiter.
Yeah. Who's Felix Leiter?
The actor?
No. I just mean he is Felix Leiter. He shows up in this movie. He's fine. I don't think there's ever been a Felix Leiter where I've been like, oh man, he's my Felix Leiter.
They're all recast so often, and none of them get to do anything ever.
Well, this Felix Leiter, who is Jeffrey Rush, I believe. No,
Jeffrey Wright.
Jeffrey Wright. Jeffrey Rush is Barbossa. And Casanova Frankenstein.
Yes.
But Jeffrey Wright, he is the only Felix Leiter ever to play Felix Leiter consecutively. Because there is another Felix Leiter who played him twice, but there's like 7 films in between. Because the guy that plays him in, I think it's Live and Let Die, is also in License to Kill. That's the same guy. I don't know why it's the same guy, but it is.
Well, see, in License to Kill would have felt a little bit more emotional for Felix if we had a consistent actor all the way through.
Oh, absolutely.
Or at least between those movies.
I would love if I don't know if Jeffrey Wright comes back for Spectre.
I don't think he does.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But this is, I know who this Felix is. He's in 2 films consecutively. If they make another movie with him in it and they do something like License to Kill, that would affect me more than anything that's ever happened to Felix Leiter ever, because I've seen this guy now 3 times if he's in a 3rd film.
Yes, and he's had more than 2 seconds of dialogue.
It's really weird because Felix is so different in the books.
Yeah.
He's James's pal, kind of, whenever he goes to America. Like, Felix is his friend. He's also a cripple for most of the books.
Oh, yeah, he is.
Because Live and Let Die is where he gets all messed up, and that's the 2nd book.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It's been a while since I read that.
Yeah,
I need to go back and read all those books.
He's got a claw hand, or hook hand, for the rest of the books. And he's also really American.
Yes, very generically American.
Which obviously he's not here, but I think Jeffrey Wright is fine. I mean,
he just doesn't get anything to do.
Yeah,
but he's an okay actor.
With all Felix Leiters, he doesn't really get anything to do.
He shows up. His name is Felix Leiter, and that's about it.
And I like that they held it as like kind of a reveal. I think they're giving mainstream audiences way too much credit that anyone knows who Felix Leiter is.
Yeah. Although he does get the hilarious line of what happens to the winnings, and Felix says, "Does it look like we need the money?" And then 2 years later, financial crisis.
We do need the money.
You totally needed the money.
Do you know how much we're in debt to China? We really could have used that. But no, and he's got some kind of quip about like bleeding chips, and like he's got like a couple like cool guy lines.
Yeah, nothing stand out. Although I do like that he's the one that stops Bond from killing Lashif. I feel like if they were going to build a friendship, that should have been the catalyst for it.
Well, I do actually feel like they're more friendly. I don't know if friendly is the right word. I don't know. I feel like they have a good chemistry that if another Bond had with Felix, I don't remember because they immediately got a different Felix. I feel like they have a really good chemistry, and even though I don't think they're even on screen together in Quantum of Solace,
they have one scene together.
Do they? Yeah, I think it's near the end. I think you're right. But
because Felix warns him about the SWAT team after him.
That's right. But like I buy that Felix is like loyal to Bond in Quantum. Like I just feel like they kind of vibe.
And a lot of that's just like you said, it's the actors before it's the script.
Oh, absolutely.
I really wish he was back for Spectre, because all the movies dealing with Quantum have him, which is 2.
That's true. I didn't even think of that, but yeah, you're right. Maybe he is. Like, I really don't know. I haven't heard anything about him being back, but, I mean, he could be.
I mean, I haven't seen him in any of the trailers, and I feel like they would show him at least once.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
But yeah, so he buys him back in, which there is no discussion about. I would think Vespa would be pissed.
Yeah.
But she acts like she bought him back in. Like, she stays there and watches the games, and
yeah. And I mean, the buy-in that the Americans give Bond, the British would then have to pay back. It seems like that whole process is a little bit too easy.
And I'm also not sure, or I'm also confused. Like, if you get knocked out, you can just buy back in. Like,
they say you can do it up to a point.
Oh, that's right.
It's part of the rules until you get to the final 4.
Yeah, that just feels weird. Like I it's a tournament, but don't worry, if you get knocked out, you can just come right back.
Yeah, again, it's all just because that poker game is so badly done. Because if they had consistent rules and they shot it consistently, it wouldn't matter.
I wonder how many of those scenes where they're actually playing poker were just shot like in whatever order. Like we'll figure out which hand is which scene later.
Yeah. I mean, clearly they only stacked the deck a couple of times to get important cards out, but that's about it.
Yeah. and then Bond wins, and Lashif isn't happy. And one of my favorite things from the book to the movie is how little things have changed.
Yeah.
The Mathis sends in the book. Mathis sends a note to Vesper, and she leaves. And in the movie, it's a text. I was like, oh, how little we've really progressed in. But this gets this really weird, muddled thing with Mathis, that Mathis might be a traitor. In the book, there was no inclination that Mathis is a traitor.
Well, Mathis is just a different character in the book. Like this movie version has almost nothing in common with him.
And is this Mathis's first appearance?
In the movies,
stuff
yes.
In a couple of books. Because he is essentially French Felix Leiter. He's the guy that Bond hangs out with when he goes over there. And they know each other previously in the books, which I don't know if they do in the movie or not.
In the movie, they don't. He meets him for the first time when after they talk about Vespa, and he points out where Lashif is when they're sitting outside.
Oh yeah. Oh, he also has that great scene where he gets that guy arrested.
Yes. With the two bodies in his trunk.
Yeah. I love how surprised that guy is. He's a really great extra. But so there's this weird confusion about Mathis. That Qualm of Solace, I think Mathis is in Qualm of Solace just to clear up the fact that he wasn't actually a traitor.
Yeah, that he wasn't a traitor, and they bought him a villa.
Yeah, because he's not at all in the book, and in Casino Royale it's kind of hinted at. And then like the reveal is that Vesper is the traitor. And then I think Bond says, "I'm not sure if he's clear or not."
Which I would have liked better if Quantum was better, because I love the idea that Bond's gotten to this place where he absolutely cannot trust anyone. That's partly why I like the song for Quantum, because it's about not being able to trust anyone.
Yeah.
So even if Bond's got a reason to trust Mathis, he probably wouldn't. But again, Quantum just doesn't do much with that.
Yeah. But so we have this cool. I really like the car chase bit where she's just tied up.
Oh yeah.
It's so old school. It's
yeah, she's just tied to the middle of the road.
It's literally like tying a chick up and putting her on the train tracks. Also, what would they have done if he hit her?
That's a good question. Well, we don't even get any indication. Well, if she's working with Lashif, then I guess he would know that Bond's got a thing for her.
But if he hits her,
No, I just mean like why leave her in the road specifically? But I guess that makes sense.
Well, but if he hits her, they don't get the money. She has it. She has the.
No, it's dumb. And considering how fast he's going, it's the middle of the night. He had every chance to hit her.
Yeah. But then we get the torture scene, which when I first saw it, I loved. I thought it was so dark and so gritty. And as time's gone on, I've really come to hate this scene.
Yeah, it's like you said last time we talked. It loses all of its teeth.
It's got the teeth, and I'm willing to bet it's because of the PG-13. I am willing to bet that they had to make this scene this way to get PG-13. But that doesn't fix the scene. The problem is in the book, this scene is incredibly tense and really terrifying. Bond is constantly thinking about the fact that he may never be able to have sex again, or even just go to the bathroom correctly again. And he's also worried about that, like, torture becomes after a certain point, torture becomes pleasure, and you become in love with your torturer. None of that is in this movie. He's just making fun of it, and it really takes the teeth out of the scene.
Yeah, and I mean, the book also does a great job of setting up Luck as something Bond wants to seduce or ravish, and the whole idea of this character exists by being able to take advantage because he's a man. And attacking that literally in the torture scene is the most horrifying thing he can think of.
Yeah, exactly.
And in the movie, that's not there at all.
Yeah, no, I really think it has to be the rating. Like, the way it's shot and, like, how grimy and dirty it is, it doesn't feel like it's going to have the teeth taken out of it.
No, I mean for the Lashif is playing the hell out of the scene. It's just Bond making
great.
jokes that kills it.
Yeah. And I should have paid attention to this when I rewatched it. I wonder if all the jokes are close-ups. Like possibly reshoots. Oh, so it's possible that those are reshoots or inserts.
That's possible, because every time Bond makes a joke, you're right up against his face, and Lashif's right next to him.
I wonder if those are inserted reshoots.
Maybe. Are there deleted scenes for this on the DVD? I didn't check.
I don't think so. Are there ever deleted scenes on Bond DVDs?
I don't know. I never checked. It's just one of those things.
I don't think there's ever deleted scenes.
Because that would be interesting. Because if this movie does have a certain number of cuts, it'd be interesting to see whether or not you could splice together an R-rated version of the movie.
Yeah, no, I bet you that there is an R-rated version of that scene that plays a lot better.
Yeah, probably so.
But I mean, I guess for a PG-13, it's pretty dark and pretty. Because I was shocked when I saw the film that they kept it.
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising before it's effective on a story level.
Yeah.
Especially if we're talking about the people that are coming off the Moore and Brosnan films, where they've got a tongue-in-cheek quality to them, and then they just see this.
Well, to be fair, as terrible as the rest of the movie is, the torture at the beginning of Die Another Day is kind of serious. That movie goes cartoon, but
I mean, it doesn't help that we see the torture to the song, which is so awful.
Yeah. But it's just the implication of the act is really horrifying.
Yeah.
Like I really feel that Bond making jokes takes the teeth out of the scene. But maybe if I wasn't thinking about it, or even just my reaction when I first saw it, I was like, holy crap. They're just swinging a knot against his balls, and that's terrifying.
Well, and I mean, I'd be more okay with him making jokes if after that, when he's recovering and he's actually terrified or worried or become...
Yeah, and they kind of skip that.
Yeah, they skip all that, and then that's the book conversation. That's the part where Mathis shows up. Oh, bless you. Where Mathis shows up, and they talk about how Lashif thought he was the hero and Bond thought he was the hero. And it's all about that relative perspective.
Yeah, well, and that's also, and it's really weird where this franchise goes, and even where the end of this movie goes, you would at least think they would have done something with the I'm going to go after the evil behind the evil.
Yeah.
Given that this movie ends with him going after this mystery man.
Yeah, Mr. White.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we know that in this movie.
Oh, no, we don't. Yeah, we know that in Quantum, the opening.
Yeah, because everybody's named after a color for some reason.
Yeah, I don't get that.
They're all part. They're all part of Clue. That's what the organization should be called. It should be called Clue.
Is Christoph Waltz's character named after a color?
No, he's Obenhauser, something Obenhauser. And I mean, he's probably Blofeld. I mean, we
yeah, he's going to be Blofeld. There's no way anything else.
Well, and it also, when I first saw Skyfall, I thought they were saying Silver, not Silva.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, they kind of left it open for him to be part of, but no, he's Silva.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they completely. I guess maybe you're right. It would have been more okay if they followed up, because his fears of never being able to be a man again are continued into him at the hospital.
Yeah, they are. And part of the issue is that so much about this is that Bond is too much of a man. That Bond is too stereotypically brutish. He's too stereotypically a blunt instrument.
Well, and he's got his armor up and doesn't let anybody in.
Exactly, and then it all breaks away, and it's in that moment that we're supposed to read that he has to build something new out of himself. And part of it's just that Daniel Craig doesn't really look any different when he's lying there. Just acting-wise, he's not doing anything different. But the movie also doesn't give him anything to work with.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, they kind of try to pull all of that into the single conversation he has with Vesper in his wheelchair.
Which is not a great conversation.
No, it's about his vulnerability, and I like that. But it's not about the fact that he just had his balls mashed by a knot, and that he might never function again. Like, that's not even like it. it disregards the fact that this man was just tortured. It is about their relationship and about how they're connecting now.
And also the fact that this is in this continuity, it's his first mission, and it ended in such a painful note. He doesn't even consider that going forward.
And it's about tasing a man who brings you chocolate.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and that the password was Vesper all along.
Right. Which is made really obvious when you rewatch it.
Oh, it's totally obvious. I also missed that, or I didn't. Not that I miss. This film misses the vodka martini shaken not stirred. It goes for the full blown drink that he has in the novel.
Yeah.
Which I really want to try. I'm not an alcohol guy of any kind, really. But I want to try it, but at the same time, I don't want to be lame. It's like asking for a vodka martini shaken not stirred. I want to know what it tastes like, but I don't want people to judge me for ordering it.
There's a hilarious scene in The West Wing where the president's talking about James Bond ordering a vodka martini shaken not stirred, and he says if you order it shaken not stirred, you're dulling the alcohol with the ice. So you're ordering a watered down drink and being snooty about it.
Which obviously he does not drink in the book.
Yes, no, he doesn't in the book. It's just the movies.
Yeah. It's whatever that really complex order he has in this is. I mean, he doesn't really have a signature drink in the books. I guess kind of this.
Yeah. And everyone at the table also wants the drink, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. So that's another thing that is a staple and a trademark that is not in this film.
Yeah.
And isn't in the other ones either.
No, I don't think it's not in Quantum, I know for a fact. I don't know if it's in Skyfall.
Well, is Quantum the one where he asks for a vodka martini and they're like shaking his stirred? He's like, "Do I look like I care?"
I thought that was this. Oh
yeah, you're right. That does happen in this.
Yeah, he says that the bartender says that here, and he says, "Does it look like I give a damn?"
Yeah. So yeah, maybe it's not even in the other two movies at all.
No, I don't think it is. I know it's not in Quantum. I'm just not sure about Skyfall.
I don't think it's in Skyfall either.
He goes to that one place when he first meets the Bond girl, and that's the only place he ever has a chance to have a drink.
Yeah.
Okay.
That movie actually breaks a lot of Bond movie rules, but we'll get to that when we talk about Skyfall.
We should hurry. We spent way too much time on Casino.
Well, we kind of did the scene by scene thing, and we really shouldn't have done the scene by scene thing.
It's one of those movies. It's really complex.
It is. So at the end. I also think the ending could have been trimmed a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, because by the time Bond starts a relationship with Vespa, there's still 20-30 minutes of the movie left.
Well, and what's weird is the book is like that.
Yeah.
But the book spends all of that time on their relationship and them being together.
Yeah, what they see in each other, why she matters to him specifically, and mostly about
and detail about how often and varied their sex life is.
Yeah. Because again, this is Ian Fleming wish fulfillment, so it's got to be there.
Based on what I know about Ian Fleming, it is not wish fulfillment.
Oh, okay.
That guy was a ladies' man. He got around. It might just be him transcribing things that happened.
Maybe so. But yeah, we get that relationship stuff for most of the movie. And
here we just cut, right, and it's just them in bed together and then she goes, and
they hop a couple locations. That's about it, though.
Well, do they?
Because there's that one scene where they're on a boat and Bond sends his resignation. Then they get to Italy, and then she goes to the bank when the movie.
I thought they were on the boat in Italy.
Were they in Italy?
I think so. Maybe I'm wrong. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's proportional kind of to the book, but the focus is different because this is just kind of a big chasey action scene. And again, I feel like I would have just trimmed. I would have trimmed it down a little bit. I don't feel like the building needed to fall.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we needed the chase. I think if Bond just walked in on some organization killing Vespa, it would have been enough.
Well, I don't mind that he tries to save her, and she kind of tells him, do whatever you want, and then she dies. I don't mind that. My issue is just that it takes so long to get there, and that it's way too big.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's an opening action sequence style thing for the end, which it doesn't need.
Also, the longest in construction building ever, I think, because they destroyed this building in Spider Loves Me, and that building's still not done. Like, I'm not joking. It's the same building.
It's the same building. You're right.
And it's still under construction, like in real life.
That's hilarious. Well, I mean, it's Italy, so it might just get drenched every other week.
Yeah, it might just drop into the sea. It's not that they're not building; it's that they have to keep building it up on top of it.
See, that's when location comes in.
But I think it's interesting because the movie has the bitch is dead line, which is the last line of the book, which is much colder.
Yeah.
Here, he's still really broken up about it, and he goes after Mr. White.
Which, I mean, I kind of like the confrontation with Mr. White at the end, but I think what could have been cool is maybe just open Quantum with that.
I really like it as the ending. I don't like that he has an assault rifle.
Yeah, that's a bit much.
I really think you could just, one shot Walter P99, which I'm going to talk about, that he downgrades his gun.
And the comic talks about this as well.
In the comic it's about the P99 being a downgrade, but in the movies he goes back to a PPK, and that's a downgrade from the P99. I'm not even a gun guy. I just know things about James Bond.
No, that's fair, because Brosnan gets the P99.
Yeah, it's in the same way that like the PPK was like really what spies should have been using at that time because it's small and compact.
Yeah, but the guy that wrote into Fleming and told him about the gun.
Yeah, the P99 is very similar thing. Like, it's kind of what the PPK is now,
right?
Or at least was when
yeah.
And he has that here, and he has it in the next movie, and then Skyfall give him a PPK, which is a lesser gun because
they give him like the palm printed gun, so maybe it just has a better kick.
Maybe I don't know. Anyways,
I mean, I'm not a gun guy either, so I don't know.
Yeah, all I know is that the P99 is supposed to be a better gun than the PPK, and we go backwards.
See, most people just wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Just give him any generic pistol, and it'll be fine.
And the PPK is his famous gun. Like, everybody knows that that's what James Bond has, or people that care to know that these things.
Right. Which is a little bit more explicit in some of the Sean Connery movies, but that's about it.
Well, I actually think most people probably know because of the GoldenEye video game.
Oh yeah, that's true. The GoldenEye video game, and then later, if you play the Quantum video game, it's basically just Casino Royale the movie, and he has the PPK in that.
Oh, that's interesting. So yeah, I feel like we nitpicked this movie to death. My big issues are the poker stuff and then the torture scene. Otherwise, I do adore this movie.
Same for me. The torture scene, the poker stuff, a little bit with Vespa more than you had. But other than that, it is a great movie. Yeah, no,
it's one of the best James Bond movies. And I think it's exactly the right movie to reboot the franchise if that's what they were going to do.
Oh yeah, as a jumping off point, a catalyst for the rest of the franchise, this is great. This is exactly how you hit the ground running. It's Batman Begins level.
Oh, absolutely. It's really, really good. And I guess I feel like it's weird. I feel like the beginning chase and the ending chase are both a little bit too long. You could trim those down a little bit. But otherwise, like it's a really great movie. That is really kind of complex in its themes and ideas, which a James Bond movie hadn't been for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, we spent like over an hour on this, and there's still lots to mention about like color symbolism and the whole idea of poker and reading these characters and all that. There's a lot to this movie.
Yeah.
Which we won't talk about because we've gone on a little bit too long. Okay, so after the absurd amount of time we spent on Casino Royale, let's talk about Quantum of Solace, which came out 2 years later, yeah?
Yeah. And we should say up front, as you mentioned before, this is a film that had, I don't know if it was a first draft, but it certainly was not a finished script.
No, it wasn't. There was a couple of rewrites that I read about here and there, but it certainly didn't have an actual revision.
Yeah, because of the writer's strike.
Right. And that's kind of exciting because we, like you said before, we haven't had much of a chance to complain about the writer's strike in a while.
Yeah. Nothing has gotten to. That was the best time for making terrible movies and television. Oh, it wasn't our fault. The writer's strike.
Everything's just relegated to that. Yeah.
But this film really does, like, I really think this film should be studied. It is a perfect example of a first draft. You're just getting out all of your ideas and the basic, structure of what you want.
Right.
It has all of that. Like, that's the thing about this movie, is I think it has the seeds to be a fantastic movie. It doesn't work, but I really do think that's because it wasn't revised. I think this could have been a great movie.
Yeah, that's fair. Because we mentioned a little bit earlier, but like, it has interesting ideas, and part of it is Bond's got a bit of a touch of death. He doesn't trust anyone. It's very much a thematic sequel to Casino Royale, but so many of the best ideas are either top heavy or not discussed at all.
Well, and there's my favorite thing about this movie is that they play with the idea of how dirty the spy game is.
Right.
Which is something that doesn't come up often in James Bond. And there's two scenes that are my two favorite scenes in this movie that are about that. And the first one is when Mathis dies, Bond throws him in the trash. And I love that scene. I love the just a spy's life doesn't matter. Well, and he doesn't even just throw him in the trash. He strips his body for money and then throws him in the trash.
Yeah, and the girl's like, is that how you treat your friends? And he says he wouldn't mind.
Yeah. No, I think that scene is brilliant. And I also love where they get in contact with the FBI, and there's that guy with Felix, and he's talking to Mr. Green or somebody, Mr. White. He's talking to somebody that we know is bad.
Right.
And then when they leave, Felix says something, and he goes, "You're right. We should just deal with nice people." And I love the implication of that. The idea that for national security, you don't just get to deal with the good guys.
Yeah, or even who really are the good guys. It's all just a matter of who has the most power and who is seen as the moral right agent.
And the movie never really follows up with that, but I love the idea.
Yeah, no, I do too. I mean, it's a fascinating place to take it. It's just a matter of the movie not really cashing in on any of those ideas and really just being like a poorly edited action romp.
Yeah, well, this is the beginning of the movie is basically one long chase scene that is kind of four chase scenes that are just broken up by a couple of scenes of talking.
Yeah. Because you got the opening car chase, then you got the guy who shoots Mr. White, which then devolves into Bond chasing or Bond fighting the guy that gets to the girl, when the girl gets chased, and then the whole boat chase.
That scene is really bad.
Like chase?
that no the where the guy tries to kill him and then he kills them and then he jumps in the car and he's like, I think somebody's supposed to kill you, or I think somebody wants you killed. Like, that's a really that's a first draft scene. Yeah, you come back and you make that scene work.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It just doesn't work. It's kind of frustrating. Because part of the problem is the editing. Part of the problem is that cameras are moving in really random directions. Things are blowing up in really random directions. It doesn't really give the viewer a lot to work with.
I do like the scene where he's caught in the like wire and like it's spinning and he's shooting. I kind of like that scene. I think that scene's pretty cool.
It looks okay. This is one of those movies that I thought looked really cool as a trailer, and it just didn't pan out right.
Well, what has Mark Foster done? Because much like Sam Mendes, he's not an action guy.
No, he's not. He did Finding Neverland, Stranger Than Fiction, World War Z.
Oh, well, you can't win them all.
Well, I didn't like World War Z really, so. Well,
that's what I was talking about. Yeah, he's not really an action guy. And I feel like it feels like that. Like, this is a guy, because this movie really is shot kind of like a Jason Bourne movie.
Yeah.
And I think it's a guy who didn't know how to shoot that. It was like, oh, this is what I should shoot.
And I mean, you listen to interviews with him, and he's fixated on this idea of doing action scenes that represent the four elements, even though that doesn't really mean anything.
Well, you have one on water.
Yeah, you have one on water. You got the fire at the end of the movie. You got the plane with the air, and I guess the Earth scene is just chasing through the city in the opening.
Yeah, that doesn't mean anything or do anything in the movie.
It doesn't, but that's all he talks about.
Yeah, I'd never heard that. I guess that's kind of interesting. Um, I mean, that's the George Lucas way of thinking. Well, last time we were in a desert. What if this time we started in a blizzard?
Yeah. I guess it's important to mention that this is the first and really only James Bond sequel film. And it wasn't.
It doesn't need to be at all. This film could have totally opened with Mr. White being in prison, and this is when they go to interview him. Like, it doesn't need to start like 5 minutes later.
Yeah, it doesn't. And there's later interviews with Daniel Craig where he talks about the idea of this being a sequel to a direct sequel to Casino was a very late decision.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and again, it just all goes back to the writer's strike, the whole idea that this movie didn't really have a consensus when it began production. They were just working out things as it was being filmed.
Well, and I mean, regardless of the opening scene, it is definitely a sequel to Casino Royale. I mean, that is the idea.
Yeah.
It's building this universe. It's this serialized kind of storytelling that Skyfall interrupts, and it's because of this gap, which we'll talk about when we get to Skyfall.
Right.
But this film was kind of like there's momentum being built of like the layers of this organization finding stuff out. I'm really interested to know what would have happened if there was not that gap, because I guarantee you the next movie would have continued with Quantum.
Yeah, you're probably right. And maybe even like finish up that plot thread. I doubt they would have kept that going too much longer.
I think they would have kept it through however many films Craig did, which I don't think there would have been any discussion about Craig might not come back for a fifth film. I think because of that time gap, that's why, because I guess a fifth film would be what Spectre is now, if they'd run on schedule. But we'll never know what Quantum would have been, because it either is Spectre or Spectre takes it over in the meantime.
Or it's just like a small subset of Spectre or something like that. Like they'll just maybe overcomplicate what Quantum.
Yeah, it's weird because Quantum, the idea seems to be that they are this like super terrorist organization that exists within other terrorist organizations and maybe within other governments.
Right.
It's interesting because Skyfall plays with these ideas a lot, of the faceless enemy that is everywhere. And like that's kind of started here. It's really dumb that it's named Quantum. It is just named Quantum because of the title, and the title doesn't make sense if you've read the short story. Like,
yeah,
in like what Quantum of Solace means within the short, and I this is my favorite thing about the interviews leading up to this movie, is that everyone comes up with a different rationalization for the title. In the short story, A Quantum of Solace is the bare minimum of affection that's needed within a relationship for it to function. That's all it means. Is that it is how much it is what you need to keep your relationship going. Once you lose that Quantum of Solace, your relationship is going to fall apart.
See, and the way you explain that, it almost feels like it would have worked better as part of the tack on to Casino Royale.
Yeah, no, it makes way more sense. Here, Quantum of Solace maybe kind of is James Bond getting emotionally better, getting over Vesper's death, like having a little bit of satisfaction. Like it's really a dumb title. I love the title as a title. I think it's a really cool title.
Yeah, it sounds cool. It
doesn't do anything for the movie, and Quantum is clearly named Quantum just because of the title.
Yeah, I mean, we don't name drop them at all in Casino, so this whole thing was just flying by the seat of your pants until you got to this movie.
Well, I mean, there clearly was an organization in Casino.
Right, but they just weren't called Quantum.
Yeah, and they're only called Quantum because, well, and I mean, they're not Spectre because of all the legal issues. But This is kind of building them up, and I think that's really the stuff that the things that work in this movie are largely the world building and the ideas. The movie doesn't hold together completely, and I like Dominic Green. I know people hate him; they think he's an awful villain. I think the actor has a really good kind of like skeevy charisma. And I love that he's this. I like that he's this little non-imposing guy, and at the end he fights the only way a little non-imposing guy could fight James Bond, which is just like flailing about and going crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, I like that he's sort of a political threat before he's a physical one, but they don't do a whole lot with that water plot he has.
This is something that I guarantee you would have been ironed out and done better in a later draft, because I really like the idea that he's essentially preparing himself for the resource war.
Yeah.
And I really like that. Like, that's a really smart idea. And I love that everyone thinks it's oil and that turns out to be water. That's really, really clever. It's just done like a brick being thrown at your face. Like, they don't really do anything with it. It's just kind of, oh, by the way, we have this plot twist. And that's a first draft thing. Is like, you're like, I know I want to do this plot twist where like everyone thinks it's oil the whole time and then it's really water that he wants. Again, like, I feel like it would have been better. I really like the idea.
And then that ending with Bond making him drink the oil, leaving him in the desert, would have played so much better.
Oh, and I love that. I love that. I think this film has a really strong third act. I think the first two are kind of meandering and not great. I think this has a really strong third act. I love that Bond doesn't sleep with the Bond girl.
Oh yeah.
I don't love the dipping the girl in oil.
Yeah, the Goldfinger callback.
I didn't need that. That was.
And that was another thing when this movie came out that people were really in love with the whole Goldfinger reference and everything. But I don't really see the point of it. It didn't even look that cool.
No, and it kind of is there to throw like them off his track. Is where like Bond's like, well, it's not about oil, and they're like, really? Because he just dipped a whole girl in oil. That clearly means he's about oil.
So, and what's with her name? Like, why is it a Beatles reference?
Strawberry Fields?
Yeah. Like, why? What was the point of that?
I think it's just supposed to be a double entendre. Because she's a redhead.
I don't know. It seems random. Like they talk about how the Beatles thing was a whole in-joke for the production. I don't really get what the point of it was.
I always assumed that it was. I didn't even think of the Beatles thing. I always assumed it was just supposed to be a double entendre because she's a redhead, and the joke that we always make about redheads is do the carpet match the drapes? Ha ha ha. A field.
See, I didn't think of it that way. I just assumed from the interviews it was about the song, "The Strawberry Fields Forever," and it's not forever because she dies like 20 minutes after she's introduced.
But yeah, I really like a lot of the ideas in this film. I don't think it's a particularly great film. And I think it's weird because I think Spectre's really going to decide how important this film is. Because tomorrow I'm going with my little brother to see the movie, and he's like, okay, which movies do I need to rewatch? And like, I was like, well, Casino Royale, Quantum, and Skyfall. But depending on how Spectre goes, Quantum could kind of become a non-entity.
Yeah, same with Skyfall.
Well, but Sam Mendes has said, like, regardless of plot stuff, Sam Mendes has said that it's going to continue the themes and ideas of Skyfall.
Oh, okay, I didn't read that. Okay, yeah, it's gonna live and die by a sequel. It's kind of like Prometheus in that way, where the execution by itself is just not very good, but you could build on it. You could do something with what's set up.
Oh, what's the Prometheus sequel? It's a really dumb title.
Oh yeah, like Alien Paradise Lost.
Alien Paradise Lost. Which is not as good as my sequel title for Prometheus, Promethei, or Prometheuses. I'm not sure what the plural is, but whatever it is.
Prometheus is...
Yeah, it's either Prometheuses or Promethei. That's what it should have been called.
No, you're you're right. It's going to depend on how Spectre handles some of the stuff, and whether or not it feels retroactive to have Quantum in the first place. Because my big fear for that movie is it's just going to pretend Quantum was barely a thing, despite this movie making a big deal out of how important and secret they are.
Well, we know Mr. White is in the movie, and I think I want to say that I've read that the Bond girl is his daughter or connected to him in some way.
Yeah, I've read the same thing.
So, I mean, this could get to like Hideo Kojima levels where it's like Mr. White isn't actually working for Quantum. He's actually working for a secret organization above Quantum.
I hope that's not it. I really hope that's not it.
Yeah, I really appreciate that they're not just disregarding Quantum, which they totally could have done. I guess they're sticking with it. There's something else I wanted to mention about this movie before we move on, because I don't think there's a lot
No, there's not.
else to talk about. There's one more thing
Um,
about this movie. Paul Haggis was the like real writer again.
oh, he was. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, I thought it was a different writer.
I want to mention the song while you think of your thing.
Oh yeah, the song that you and you alone like.
Yeah, the song that I alone kind of like. Because my big problem with the title sequence is that the animations look awful. It's really bland. It's really boring looking. But I like the beat of the song. I like the lyrics. It's just a matter of Alicia Keys and Jack White are not very good together.
I don't actually mind the title credits. I think it's kind of a throwback to the old like Bond openings, like but with CGI. I really don't mind the opening. It's not a great opening that sticks with me, but I don't mind it. I actually think what would have been smart to do with the opening is instead of having all that oil to have water, so that when you go back and watch it, you're like, oh, they were telling us the whole time.
Yeah, that could work. That could work. See, that's where you just recapture the Thunderball credits.
Yeah, I really don't like the song.
I'm okay with the song. I don't know why everyone hates it, but it's not a great song or anything. It's just not awful.
There's a character in this called Elvis.
That's funny.
It's Green's second in command. That guy's name is Elvis. That's weird.
That's hilarious. Oh, one thing about Green, I know I saw an interview with that actor as well. While I was preparing for this, apparently he was trying to channel Tony Blair.
I could kind of see that.
Yeah, a little bit.
And that's also, I mean, we mentioned it before, but he's Mr. Green, and then we have Mr. White, and neither of those appear to be, like, code names.
Right.
Those are their real names. Well, Mr. White might be a code name, I'm not sure.
I guess we'll see what Spectre does with that again.
But his
Green
name
is definitely his real name.
Yeah, he is Dominic Green. Maybe he just got accepted because he's... well, and they really play up how big Quantum is. Like, when he has that speech to that guy, he's basically like, well, we can make a government rise and fall. Like, the only reason you're here is because your predecessor wouldn't do ball with us. The thing I wanted to mention is that this movie's weird cultural thing is that weird eyeball opera.
Oh, yeah.
What is
Bond
that?
snaps all the pictures.
The only thing I've ever seen, which is a scene that thinks it's way more clever than it really is.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing I've ever seen that like I can relate to with that is the weird jellyfish opera in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, I was going to mention the same thing.
But yeah, that scene is not nearly as smart. Where James Bond's like, you need to find another meeting place, and then they just get up and he just takes their pictures.
That was dumb.
And the thing that I hated when I saw it in theaters, and I still hate it, is he drives Dominic Green out into the desert. He throws him down, and he goes, I told you everything you wanted to know about Quantum. And I was like, but you didn't tell us!
And we're still in the dark about that until Spectre's out.
Yeah.
There's a whole film where none of that information means anything.
And then the last scene is obviously him going after Vespa's ex, which is something that I feel like should have been more of a through line. Like, it's kind of just briefly mentioned at the beginning and then it comes back at the end, which, from my understanding, is kind of based on James Bond New York. I guess James Bond New York is very similar to that scene.
I have never actually read it, but I guess...
I'm not either, because it's not reprinted in most of the collections.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, apparently James Bond New York is him talking to either like an American spy and telling her that her boyfriend is a double agent.
Okay.
I think because they put the gun barrel at the end, and because of how that scene is, I think that scene should have been black and white and then gone to the gun barrel.
Oh, that could have been really interesting. I mean, this all just goes back to your idea of this only being a first draft, because you rewrite the script and all those ideas come out a lot better, and you would have done the black and white by the end.
Yeah, no, I feel this way with Skyfall too. I feel like because they got kind of cutesy with the gun barrel in casino, they're like, well, we can't go back to having it at the beginning. We have to do something with it. So they threw it at the end.
Yeah, although Sam Mendes really wanted to put it in the beginning, it's just a matter of Bond coming in with a gun that they weren't able to balance that out.
Well, it kind of works at the end of Skyfall, but it wouldn't have worked any less with it at the beginning.
No, it wouldn't have. And I guess this is the best place to mention, if any. That's my big annoying criticism of the Daniel Craig films, which is that they are just the longest 0 issues ever. He's constantly becoming Bond in every movie. And even with Spectre, that hasn't gone away, because Spectre is all about the author of all of his pain and some guy he knew.
Well, but at least that is something that James Bond deals with later is Spectre. Like, it's not, I don't know, it's not like his first adventure with Spectre and now we're just finally getting to it.
No, that's fair. It's just a matter of, like, he hasn't really played James Bond. He's constantly playing James Bond, becoming more like James Bond.
Well, and it's not, it's a thing of, like, when we get to the end of the film, it's like, now he's James Bond.
Yeah.
Now he's James Bond.
And they do it 3 times in a row, and it's annoying.
Well, I would argue that in Skyfall he is James Bond, but the ending of Skyfall is more, now it's the James Bond universe. Now we have Moneypenny. Now we have M with the doors. Like, I think Skyfall is less of now he's James Bond and more like now everything's set in place.
Well, see, I'd agree with that, except for the fact that Bond decides he might retire at the beginning of that movie and then decides to come back. I feel like if he was really James Bond, he wouldn't have come to that move.
Well, he does it in On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
He does, but I mean, that's a different thing. That's because he went through the same thing he's gone through here with Vespa in that movie.
That's true. Okay, well, do you want to talk about Skyfall?
Yeah, let's just go there. Quantum is just, there's not a lot to say with that movie, so yeah, let's go ahead and go on to Skyfall.
Well,
which is
before
4 years later.
Yeah, before we talk about Skyfall, we have to talk about Kevin McClory, who co-wrote a TV pilot episode for a James Bond TV show with Ian Fleming. The show never went anywhere, so Ian Fleming took that script and turned it into the novel Thunderball.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of dispute about who actually came up with Spectre and Blofeld. I guess there is a lot of evidence that it was, in fact, Ian Fleming, and that he's kind of obsessed with the word Spectre. It comes up multiple times through the James Bond books before the organization shows up.
Right.
But regardless, he did take something that somebody else worked on and change and make it into a book and say he wrote it. So when they made the movie, Kevin McClory, it's the only James Bond film not produced by the Broccolis, and it's produced by Kevin McClory, and
yeah, there was a whole massive lawsuit about that in the production of that movie.
Well, I'm not sure if it's that movie, because it feels like they settled in letting him be the producer of that movie, and then later he sued them. I'm not really sure exactly what's going on, but basically he sues them. He gets the rights to make his own James Bond movie, and maybe kind of Blofeld and Spectre. It's really confusing what he actually has and doesn't have.
Yeah.
Because they keep using Blofeld, and then he sues them because Spy Who Loved Me was supposed to be Blofeld.
Yeah.
And then it isn't because of the lawsuit. And then they really, really badly kill Blofeld. Is Octopussy? Does Octopussy open with or is it View to a Kill? Or it's For Your Eyes Only?
I think it's Octopussy. I know because it opens with the tombstone of his wife.
Yes. And then he drops Blofeld down whatever those shafts.
Oh, yeah, down the chute where he's constantly screaming, Mr. Bond!
Yeah, Mr. Bond! So, which is why we haven't had Spectre or Blofeld for so long. But the books used him, so that's weird.
Yeah.
And so anyways, this legal battle is what caused the break between License to Kill and GoldenEye. And then again here, between Quantum of Solace and Skyfall. And is it settled before Skyfall?
It's not settled.
Because I don't think we officially knew they had Spectre and Blofeld till after Skyfall.
Yeah, I don't think we knew until after Skyfall came out, but I think it was in the process of being settled while that movie was coming out.
Also, I think in between MGM dissolves, and that caused issues too.
Yeah, it's either right at the beginning of the production for this movie or right after. I don't remember exactly.
But yeah. So there was a lot of issues that caused Skyfall to be late. Or this movie to get made because when they first came out with Casino Royale, they'd said that they wanted to do Bond every other year.
Right.
Which Quantum of Solace is that. And then obviously Skyfall wasn't. Skyfall is very much not the next movie after Quantum of Solace.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, it's almost a filler.
See, I feel like in a lot of ways, it feels like the first movie in a new James Bond. It feels like it could have been Casino Royale or GoldenEye. It feels like, because it's really all about how this franchise still means something, how it still has kick, how it's not old-fashioned.
Right.
It's rewatching it with the other two. It's really weird. It's not the third film of a James Bond actor. It's the first film of a James Bond actor. Or the last film, maybe.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Could you imagine if they made this instead of View to a Kill? The entire theme is that he's not too old to still be James Bond.
See, I'm just imagining Roger Moore in that situation where he's almost as old as Judi Dench.
And like he holds on to like the elevator and that cuts away and there's clearly a dude like half his age actually holding on to the elevator.
And see, then they should have brought in Sean Connery back for real at the end of that.
Well, a lot of people have said that they thought Sean Connery should have been at the end of Skyfall as the caretaker.
Yeah, he was supposed to be, but they cut at the last minute because they thought it would either confuse audiences or take away from Craig.
Yeah. I heard they just thought it would take people out of the film.
Which I don't agree with. I feel like that would have been the perfect way to cap off the meta commentary.
I don't know if he would have come back for it.
Kind of a big enough paycheck and he'd do it.
Maybe.
Connery is not above a lot. He's one of those actors that
he has not returned to acting. He has done voice work since he's retired, but we've never seen him come back live action.
That's true. I don't know. It's the 50th anniversary. I feel like he might make an exception for it, but I guess we'll never know.
Yeah, I don't even know how he feels about the franchise at this point.
Yeah, at least Roger Moore periodically talks about the new movies as they come out, but I haven't heard anything from Connery.
Well, and Roger Moore loves James Bond. Connery seems to oscillate between hatred and nostalgia. I'm not really sure how he feels about James Bond as a franchise.
Yeah, he loved it and was nostalgic for it again when Cubby Broccoli died, but after that I haven't heard anything. Yeah,
but so Skyfall brings in Sam Mendes, who, what else has he done?
He did American Beauty.
Oh, that's it. That's the big one. I knew there. It's that. Is it Jarhead? Did he do Jarhead? I want to say he did a movie about soldiers.
He might have. I know he did Road to Perdition. Maybe that was it.
No, that's about the mafia guys.
Oh, is it? Okay, I never saw it. Those are the only big ones that are coming to me: Road to Perdition and American Beauty.
I thought he did one about soldiers. It doesn't really matter.
I'm just checking his book. Yes, you say that.
Is a guy that did not.
Yes, he did Jarhead.
Jarhead. Yeah, I'm also looking at his wiki. Well, it's weird. He also did Kite Runner.
Oh, he did Kite Runner. Yeah, you're right.
Well, he produced Kite Runner. Mark Foster, the director of the last one, directed Kite Runner.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, he also did Revolutionary Road. That's interesting.
Wow, American Beauty was his first film. That's impressive.
Yeah. That's a great movie. Anyway.
He's also the first director in a long time to do two films back to back with James Bond, which wasn't uncommon before. Whoever did Living Daylights did the four preceding films as well.
Okay. That's interesting.
He directed 5 James Bond movies in a row. So it's not unprecedented, but we don't really do that anymore with James Bond.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, we keep the behind the scenes stuff pretty consistent. It's just not the director.
yeah. And this brings in John Logan, who's also writing Spectre again with Purvis and Wade.
Which is interesting because John Logan's not a writer I like. Like, he's written a lot of bad movies.
Really?
Like, he wrote Sweeney Todd, the 2007 movie. He wrote Star Trek Nemesis. He wrote Last Samurai.
I really like Last Samurai.
Oh, okay, I don't. That's just a worse version of Glory.
I never saw Glory.
Oh, okay. Well, Glory's a really good movie. It's a Civil War movie.
But I like Samurais.
That's fair. I don't know. I didn't like that.
Gladiator. And The Aviator.
Oh, he did The Aviator.
Yeah. He's written good things.
I guess most of what I've seen by him I don't like.
He created Penny Dreadful, which is a show I've been meaning to check out, but have not gotten to. Oh, and he wrote Rango, which is the weirdest, most inappropriate children's film.
That's a fun movie, yeah.
And he wrote Hugo.
I didn't like Hugo that much.
I've never seen it.
I mean, it was okay. I liked it a lot the first time I saw it. Then subsequent viewings just didn't work.
His track record looks about what a standard Hollywood screenwriter looks like. It's my favorite thing anytime Akiva Goldsman is attached to something. They're like, Oscar-winning screenwriter of A Beautiful Mind. And I'm like, Razzie-winning screenwriter of Batman and Robin. Because that was the big announcement with Transformers, was they were like, the head of our new Transformers writing room is Oscar-winning screenwriter. And I was like, you mean Razzie-winning screenwriter?
The good thing is he's already done a toy commercial, so they're in good hands.
Yeah, that's true. And I talked to you. I talked to you about this theory that I had while I was watching the movie, because it is really weird. This kind of does the Dark Knight Rises thing, where like you have two movies of origin story, and then we jump ahead to them being old and like not necessarily up to the task.
Right.
And it feels really weird with Skyfall, especially because Bond movies have that weird comic book sliding scale.
Right.
But I propose that Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace both take place in 2006. Because Quantum has to, because it's 5 minutes after Casino Royale. And then Skyfall takes place when it comes out in 2012. So there is a 6-year gap where he has been James Bond and has become, like, it's old hat. Like, he is one of the best in the service. There has to be things that happen between Skyfall and Quantum.
Right. And then you could write new books or make comics that are set between those two movies in the Craig universe.
Well, that was my big pitch, is instead of just keep churning out like directionless novels where like we get a new writer and they kind of start setting up things and then we just get a completely different writer who does completely their own thing. Carte Blanche is clearly the first book in a multi-Bond series. But this is what we should be doing, is we should be filling this gap, and maybe that's where you could use like Dr. No and stuff. But anyways, so I think it's possible that this does take place 6 years after Quantum of Solace.
I guess it also depends on how consistent it is with Spectre, because if he's not old or at least a bit of a veteran in that movie, it's not going to work.
Well, and I wonder if Spectre will comment on like, after 6 years, you just stopped looking for us, or something like that.
Yeah, or maybe that movie could even say something like, it's been almost 10 years since we even ran into each other.
Oh, that's a really good bit in Quantum of Solace that I really like, that I forgot to mention, is when they're interrogating Mr. White, and he says, he has that great bit where he's like, on the other side, we're always looking over our shoulders, and we're worried that, the CIA and MI6 are reading all our messages. You don't even know we exist. I really like that bit. Anyways.
Yeah, that's good.
So Skyfall is one of those movies where when you get to the end of it, it's satisfying, but I'm not sure it actually all makes sense. But I'm also not sure it doesn't all make sense.
I don't know. I think it all makes pretty good sense.
Well, the beginning of the movie with the knock list just disappears.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
No, the knock list is what Silva's using to send out different soldiers' names to get killed, and how he's blackmailing
That's what I'm talking about. Is after they show that YouTube clip, it's never mentioned again.
Well, that's just because it's the start of his plan. Like, it's not really the end game. That's just how they find him.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I don't know. It just like that's kind of a plot thread that started and like never comes up again.
Yeah, I mean, like that's not the big thing for him either.
Oh
Like
no,
it's
no,
not
that's
him about him killing soldiers. It's about him killing soldiers to get M's attention so he can kill her.
yeah. And blowing up MI6 headquarters.
Yeah.
Um, he does also know everything. He knows
Yeah, that
MI6
and the hacking are a little bit over the top here.
I don't I don't mind most of the hacking. There are a couple of instances where I'm like, why would there be a computer in the gas main for you to be able to hack it?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I'm just never a fan of films using like real geometric proportions for computer lingo, like a computer code coming in the form of a giant subway map.
yeah, no, that's really I don't like it in Age of Ultron either, where he's like, this is a representation of Jarvis. This is a representation of Ultron. These representations then fight, and I was like, that's not how representations work.
I'm a
Um,
little bit more okay with the Ultron side because he is actually a brain.
yeah, but it's just supposed to be like this is like it's just a data readout.
No, that's fair. It's kind of annoying.
And this movie does the same thing with Q later, where he's like, look at this algorithm, look, it's like moving, and I was like, I don't think that's how computers work. I'm not a computer guy, but I don't think that's how computers work.
I'm not a computer guy, and I know that's not how computers work.
And Q is supposed to be like one of the smartest like guys, and he's just like, let me just plug in this thing that kind of came from Q clearly does not practice safe sex. But well, I guess we get Moneypenny and Q finally.
Yeah. And we don't know Moneypenny's name until the end of the movie, which I don't think was necessary.
I mean it's kind of cutesy, but I knew she was Moneypenny going into it.
Yeah, so did I.
Well, I mean, I didn't like officially know, but like that was the big rumor is like they're only listing her as Eve. We think she's the new Moneypenny, so I wasn't surprised by that. I did not know that Ralph Fiennes was M. I was surprised by that because
Oh yeah.
there's that great scene. It's one of those scenes that never works again for me. Not that it doesn't work like it's a bad scene, but that scene where he walks in on Q and Tanner, and you think he's a bad guy for a second.
Oh yeah.
It's a
And then
bummer.
he just agrees to help them.
Yeah, it's a bummer because I'll never experience that again because I know he's not there to threaten them.
Yeah.
But I love him as M. I mean I don't know. I haven't seen him as M, but the idea of Ralph Fiennes as M is really cool. And I really like how they use him. That Bond kind of doesn't trust him, and he kind of earns his respect along the way.
Yeah, and I mean, I like there's a whole big gap of assumed history between him and Judi Dench's M, and then Bond just slowly starts to accept that because it's a lot like the parent leaving something behind for him.
Well, and this movie really foreshadows M's death, but I don't think it's so bad that you would necessarily immediately know. Like I watched this movie with my mom when it came out on DVD, and she didn't get it until near the end. I don't remember exactly when, but it's at least when they go to the farmhouse, to Skyfall. Like she's like, oh no, M's gonna die. Like this is all about M. She has to die.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those things that becomes more and more obvious the more you watch it, because M basically becomes the main character for a little while.
See, that's the thing, is I think it's one of those movies where it's not as obvious as you think it is every time you rewatch it.
Yeah.
But what I loved was that when they put this movie out, there was no statement that this was Judi Dench's last James Bond film. A lot of times they flub stuff like that. And there was nothing saying like, well, this is Judi Dench's last James Bond. And so I didn't know going in that she was going to die. I didn't even know while watching the movie that she was going to die.
Although a lot like Moneypenny, that was the big rumor.
I don't know if I really heard that one.
I know I heard that a lot going in right before it, so I wasn't surprised when she died, but it still worked enough in the context of the film that I didn't mind.
Oh, I wasn't, like, by the time it happened, I wasn't surprised.
Right.
I feel like there's, I was thinking about while I was watching it, that you were like, there's not really good interesting filmmaking, or shooting or direction. I really there's a shot I really like when they're going to that weird church building that is on Skyfall property.
Oh yeah, when
And
they have their final confrontation.
well, when they're moving there, when James is running there and Silva's there, and there's this and there's the fire from the house in the background, and James is standing so that the flames are consuming like half of the screen, and there's darkness on the other half of the screen. And when it cuts over to Silva, you cannot see the flames. Like he's a little red because of the light, but he's surrounded in darkness. I was like, oh, it's a really cool image.
I don't quite remember. I'm going to go back and just zoom through the movie to see it. But yeah, that sounds cool. I just don't feel like that's a big staple of the movie. Like there might be quick moments, but it's not a particularly amazingly shot movie.
I think it's good.
I mean, it's serviceable. I just don't mean like there's anything about it that's as stylistically as interesting as Casino was.
Maybe not. But I don't think anything is as stylistically interesting as the shadow fight, the silhouette fight.
That's kind of fair. The silhouette fight is really great. It's just a matter of I think it's a little bit too short.
Yeah. But this is kind of the first James Bond movie to have like a real like James Bond villain.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because he doesn't have a James Bond villain plan. He is not trying to rule the world or blackmail for millions of dollars. It's very personal.
Yeah, which I really liked.
I keep trying to find a way to make him Pierce Brosnan because he's got James Bond has the cyanide pill and Die Another Day, and I'm trying to come up with a correlation. Like, this is somehow the old James Bond franchise. I can't make it fit. I'm gonna keep working at it.
I can kind of see it. My big thing, because I know some people were weirded out by the kind of weird gay overtone when they first meet each other. But part of what I really liked about that is we're talking about two arch nemesis. Like that's how Silva sees him and Bond. So there's always like an inherent implied sexual relationship between two characters that hate each other so much that they're obsessed with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like that quite a bit. And I guess the old Bond connection comes in when you start thinking about the old series as being a little bit more superficial and trying to recapture that. And Craig being so much on the other end of the spectrum at the start of his career, and Silva representing the old franchise, going all the way on the campy side to this furthest extreme. And by the end of the film, they kind of make something in the middle.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think I've ever like liked and disliked at the same time like Silva's opening speech. I love how he delivers it. I love that it's one take. It means nothing. Who are the other rats? Who is trapping? Like it doesn't really come together.
That's fair. The two surviving rats thing being Bond makes sense, but the fact that we don't get to know any other agents or anything else M has done kind of hurts the metaphor.
Well, and like it would make more sense if like we found out that like everyone else that was up for 007 like had been whittled off or something. That like who like it hasn't come down to these two. You know what I mean?
If you want to go back to Brosnan, you could even maybe make 006 a thing here.
Yeah. I mean I don't think they do go back to those. You know, this is really what kind of confirms it being a reboot.
Right. No, I just mean like you could reuse that plot point a little bit. Like just mention that other 00s have had similar or even worse experiences, and Bond just kind of gets lucky, and Silva is exploiting that.
Yeah. Maybe because you have that line in Casino where he says, you know, as far as I understand, 00s don't have a very long life expectancy.
Yeah.
You know, maybe have Silva say something where he's like, you know, there's only two agents in the history of MI6 that have lasted, you know, more than 5 years. before, dying or retiring. Something like that to be like, we're the. I just don't feel like he actually has a connection to Bond other than Bond seems to be M's new favorite.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I never really thought of it that way.
But he's crazy, and he could just be building it all up in his head. Like, that's kind of the thing about Silva. He seems really unhinged.
Yeah, he does, although the way his plan works and the way how convoluted everything is to make it work out exactly as he planned kind of hurts that theory.
Yeah.
Because, his whole plan is pretty insane.
Yeah, well, but it's kind of wacky and fun.
Yeah.
Like it never, like, that train moment is too cool for me to be like, wait, he knew that James Bond would be chasing him down this thing and exactly the time the train would become, like, I don't care.
It's a really cool moment. It's a really good stunt.
Yeah, he is, like, worked out way too far in advance, and he knows way too much what's going to happen. But I don't really care. It's an action movie plot. That's not really the point.
Right.
The point is what it means, what he's saying, the character interactions. If it's a little unrealistic, that, the villain plan, whatever.
Right. That just goes back to what we were saying earlier about Bond movies being rated by dullness.
Yeah, this is a really exciting film.
Exactly, yeah. And part of it is, it doesn't matter if Silva has bad scenes, because Javier Bardem is amazing in them.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the thing is, I don't particularly like his speech. He delivers it brilliantly.
Yeah. Like you said, the way that scene is shot, the way the character design is, everything.
That's another scene. That's another shot that I think is interesting. It's one long take.
It's not exactly unique. We've done that before. A villain shows up in one long take and gives a speech.
Have we?
I think, well, not in Bond, but in other movies.
I don't know. Long takes are kind of rare, and that it's one long speech. I don't know. I think it's a nice scene. I think that's kind of stylistic and interesting.
It's a nice scene. I don't think it's particularly stylistic.
Yeah. I love that he has, like, all those computers.
Yeah, all around.
And is that supposed to be? Because I know the opening shot is supposed to be kind of resembling the gun barrel scene.
Yeah.
Is Silva's entrance supposed to kind of be resembling the gun barrel scene? Because, like, he's in the elevator and there's computers. Is that supposed to be, like, a thing?
I don't think so. I never really thought of it that way. He's kind of got scenes here and there where it's a lot like the Bond running through the airport in Casino Royale. So he's kind of got, like, Bondish movements, but I don't think it's.
I hate when he skis down the railings.
Oh yeah.
I hate that. It looks really silly.
It looks hilarious. It's like a cartoon.
It's really silly. And I love Bond's interactions with Q. There's like a bunch of themes going on in this movie that I'm not sure they all fit together, but they all work on their own, because Silva is not the like, even though he's an older agent, it's never played for, like, James Bond is a youngin, and Silva is, like, the old dog.
Right.
But that's a theme that we get throughout the movie a little bit, just about James, and then really with the contrast to Q.
Yeah, when those two characters first meet, that whole thing about Bond talking about being in the field, Q talking about damage he can do with his laptop.
Well, and it's interesting because I understand the idea that nowadays Q would be like a young kid with a computer, but that's not what Q was. Like Q was not the tech guy, or he wasn't. Like, he was the guy that made equipment. Like, that's not the same thing.
Although I feel like the person, at least in the capture of the zeitgeist at the time, I think the person we see as being innovative and coming up with clever gadgets looks like Q does.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like they kind of changed Q's role, which is fine, and I like this new Q. I think he's really fun, and I think he has a really fun and very different interplay.
Yeah. Yeah, like I like the relationship. I like that Bond's a little bit more on a higher ground than Q used to be.
Yeah, a guy half your age can't say grow up 007.
Right.
And I love the joke of, here's a radio and a gun. He's like, well, it's not exactly Christmas.
Yeah.
And he's like, we don't really go in for exploding pens anymore. Which, that line has always bugged me because that is one of the least ostentatious gadgets they could have, called back to.
They didn't want to talk about the weird helicopter bicycle thing from You Only Live Twice?
Or the rocket pack, or
the Lotus.
Yeah, or the submarine car, or the C4 toothpaste.
Oh, yeah.
Or my favorite, the X-ray/laser camera.
Someone got cancer off that, and they just aren't talking about it.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, no, I always thought I was like, no, in this more realistic, darker version of the Bond franchise, I can still buy a pen grenade. Like, that's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as bad as a boombox rocket launcher.
Yeah, no. It's one of the. The more tame Bond gadgets.
Although I guess it's also one of the more popular ones that people just know. So even if you don't have a history with the franchise, you kind of know about the exploding pen. That's
probably true. But I really like when they're looking at that painting and they kind of have that different interpretation. He's like, it's the old warship being drawn out to sea, and and Bond is like, well, it's a really big ship. I really like that. There's so much to talk about in this movie. I don't really know. Okay. I want to talk about how uncomfortable the Savine is, or Bond.
Oh, yeah.
Savine is.
Yeah.
Some people have acted like that scene is kind of rapey. I don't think it is.
I don't think it is. I would say Silva's definitely raped her, but not the Bond one.
Yeah, no, it's not rapey. It is uncomfortable and weird. Because we know that she was a rape slave, and I don't know, it's just kind of weird. And I guess it should be noted, this breaks formula in that there is no other Bond girl.
I mean, a lot of people like to say that Judi Dench is the Bond girl for this movie.
And that's fine. That's totally fair. But in basic Bond convention, there is no second girl he sleeps with that makes it to the end.
Right. No, that's fair. I guess Moneypenny almost counts, but they don't sleep together.
I think they do.
Do they? Because that whole weird razor blade thing. There's no way that doesn't end with them sleeping together.
Yeah, no, they totally and it cuts at that. No, I totally think they sleep together. But she's not there in the rest of the movie.
Right.
And the ending of the movie is really different for a James Bond movie. And you said you had something about how the ending is hard target or something.
Oh, yeah. So the moment we get to Skyfall Ranch and Bond meets up with what's his name?
The caretaker.
The caretaker. He has another.
He has a name. I just don't know what it is.
Kincaid. That's what he is.
Kincaid.
Yeah, Kincaid. He meets up with Kincaid. They hide out with with M. They set a whole bunch of traps. Silva shows up. It's the middle of the day. Progresses throughout night. And there's all these bombs that go off. They go on a back area of the ranch where Silva and Bond have their final confrontation. All of that is the ending of Hard Target. Jean-Claude Van Damme takes the girl that's being chased to an old ranch where he grew up with an old guy with a shotgun, where they set a whole bunch of traps, and in the middle of the day, the bad guys show up and they kill everybody until the night where Jean-Claude Van Damme and the main villain have a final confrontation right outside of the ranch. It's exactly the same ending.
Yeah, that seems fair. I've never seen it, so I can't. But does the bad guy show up in helicopters with an awesome song blaring?
No.
Well,
but he is really cartoony with giant overcoats and massive guns. It's a really good movie in only a John Woo kind of crazy action way.
Is it a John Woo movie?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, it's the first John Woo movie I've ever seen and the first Jean-Claude Van Damme one, but it's really fun.
Cool. all that being said, I still think it works. Well,
no, it totally works. It's just a matter of, like, it's the ending of Hard Target.
Except for they set up this thing that doesn't pay off. They make this big deal about when Bond was a child, he went into the priest hole. And he didn't come out for like 3 days or something, and he was changed. He was a new man. That's telling me that when he goes into that again, he's going to come out like a new man. And it doesn't happen. Like, I feel like thematically that's setting something up, that like he's going to go through like a metamorphosis going through this, and he doesn't.
Well, I think he does by the end. Maybe they didn't do the best job of connecting the dots, but I feel like by the end, when you get to the traditional James Bond headquarters, it is sort of signifying the metamorphosis.
Yeah, that's fair, but I don't feel like when he comes back out and like kills Silva, like I don't feel like he's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like in that moment, it doesn't really work, because the other symbol of change and constant nature is that dumb dog toy that M keeps on her desk. And that's where your complaint of like the theme not necessarily working together comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think that symbol, along with Bond growing, really connect. I don't think they even really address them or talk about what the contrast is and what's staying the same and what's evolving.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's like we said earlier, like with Bond being a nationalist. I wish they brought that up here a little bit.
Yeah, especially that this film takes place mostly in England,
right? Yeah, exactly.
which is very unique for a James Bond film because MI6 is like the CIA. It's abroad,
right?
Which I mean that's kind of interesting. I didn't really think about the fact that it's not really brought up at all. Like that it's defending England or for England. Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Especially with what we were talking about, like a post 9/11 James Bond, and there's definitely pieces of technology and regulations and things that Silva's taking advantage of that only exist after 9/11.
Yeah.
And so the discussion of nationalism isn't really there. And again, that conversation we talked about with Casino Royale that they cut from the book, it also would have worked here.
Yeah. How do you feel about the Silva's deformity?
I don't really think it meant anything. Like, it was a cool reveal, but I don't feel like it really meant anything with him. Like, it was never about him being ugly on the inside. It was just about M corrupting who he was.
Yeah, I feel like they knew, like, okay, well, James Bond villains are physically deformed. And it's a really cool, weird-looking deformity.
Yeah, the makeup stuff and everything looks really good.
And I love when he takes it out, there's that metal bit. And the way the CGI is done, you can see it like move out and like it caves in.
Yeah.
It needed to come back. It like at the ending, like he needed to like take it out and be like, I'm gonna kill you as you made me, or something like that.
Yeah, like look upon my true face kind of thing.
Yeah. And it doesn't, so it feels really pointless.
And I know, I'm not sure if it was you, but I know people talked about like maybe Silva possibly being Blofeld. And maybe the physical deformity thing could have worked in their favor there, because Blofeld got lots of plastic surgery throughout the Bond movies.
Well, I know it's kind of dumb, but like some people kind of speculate, like, oh, maybe he's this series Jaws, or things like that. I thought he might have been Blofeld going into it, because they make a big deal out of not saying his real name for a while.
Yeah, which we find out later, and this doesn't really mean anything.
No, it means nothing. Like, I don't know why his name wasn't just Silva.
Yeah.
Because it's not like they find out that name earlier, and M's like, that name means nothing to me, and then she finds out who he is.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything. So, I don't know. Like, I wonder if maybe he might have been intended to be Blofeld in, like, an earlier draft.
And maybe that's where the whole rights issue comes in, and whether or not they settled before this movie was written.
Yeah. But I think he's a really strong villain.
Yeah, me too.
And I don't know. There's so much in this movie, and I don't want to go really long, like with. Well, and I really like that they brought back the Aston Martin.
Yeah, me too.
and it's tricked out exactly the same as in Goldfinger. That's kind of fun.
And his line about the ejector seat is hilarious.
Yeah, because there's really an ejector seat there.
And they play the classic theme as that car is driving.
They play the theme a couple of times, and a couple of times it doesn't work. This movie's a little serious for that theme. I can't remember which scene it is, but there's a scene distinctly like when I was watching, I was like, oh, that doesn't work here.
That's fair. I wish they did. Was it Dr. No, or was it From Russia with Love, where Connery's looking through his apartment or his hotel room, and they play the theme as he's just randomly searching places. If this movie had a scene like that, I feel like the theme could have worked, but it didn't really. It wasn't slow enough for that.
Yeah. I don't know. Because I know he does it with the radio thing.
Yeah.
And it works mostly there. I don't know. There's a scene later where they play it, and I was like, that doesn't fit here. Which isn't exclusive to this movie. There's plenty of James Bond movies where they play it, and you're like, this is not an appropriate time for the James Bond theme. Unlike the Indiana Jones theme, which is never not appropriate for the scene.
Well, the Bond theme also has a bad history of being poorly edited, where like the song ends and they just loop it over again, and you can tell.
Yeah.
And it just sounds awful.
But yeah, no, I really like Skyfall. It's one of my favorite of the James Bond films. And I think a lot of the ideas in it are I feel like it's kind of the kind of things that Ian Fleming would have gotten into if he hadn't died.
Yeah, like I feel like a 21st century James Bond book written by him probably would have been something like this.
Yeah.
I mean, not as bombastic, certainly, but yeah.
Oh, no. Well, maybe, because, I mean, his stuff was bombastic for the time, but...
That's true. It'd be interesting to see how he evolved with the times.
But specifically Silva, I think there's a lot of that kind of stuff that I really could have seen if Ian Fleming had gone on longer, if he'd... I don't know. I think that would have been... I think a lot of it feels very Fleming-y.
Yeah, and I mean that's partly why the Warren Ellis comic is so great, is because that he's keeping that same tone. So maybe we could explore some of the same stuff we got in that movie through that comic book with a more classic book James Bond.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see. So far he's done a pretty good job of like keeping the book's tone but making it modern. I don't know, it's really weird. Yeah. I didn't realize how weird it is to have that tone in a modern setting.
It's kind of timeless, but it's very clearly taking place in modern day.
Yeah. But I think Skyfall is really great. I'm hoping that Spectre is better.
Me too.
I haven't heard anything about reviews or anything. But with it probably being Blofeld and everything, like I really want it to be like just a really great movie.
Yeah, and Sam Mendes coming back, talking about the themes of Skyfall, like you said.
And John Logan coming back.
Yeah, like, it has every opportunity to be just as good, if not better. I really want it to be the best of the Craig movies. Because assuming he doesn't do many more, he might be the first Bond actor to have a good last movie, aside from Dalton. I like You Only Live Twice. If you count that as Connery's last movie. Well, Connery's last is Diamonds Are Forever, so...
Well, but he left the part with You Only Live Twice. I don't know, I might count that as his last movie.
You Only Live Twice is kind of weak.
I like You Only Live Twice. It's weird because you like the remake.
That's true. I like Never Say Never Again.
No, what? No, that's a remake of Thunderball.
Oh.
No, I meant from The Spy Who Loved Me.
Spy Who Loved Me. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that doesn't do the whole weird Japanese thing.
No, but that's kind of from the book.
That's true, but you can't buy it with Sean Connery because he doesn't look Japanese.
Yeah, I know, it's really racist.
It's hilarious.
But,
it's a really funny movie, if nothing else.
Yeah, well, and I don't love Donald Pleasance's Blofeld. Yeah,
he's fun. I like the guy who plays him in On Her Majesty's Secret Service more, though.
Oh no, he's my favorite. I love the look of Donald Pleasance. I don't think he plays it. I don't know. 4 films of build up. I thought he's kind of let down. And
Yeah.
but he's miles ahead of the one from Diamonds Are Forever.
Oh yeah, yeah. Everything is off of that movie. But then, and now with Spectre, maybe Christoph Waltz will be the best Blofeld, but we'll see.
Well, and I guess that's kind of a thing with Blofeld is I don't think there has been a Blofeld yet, like where it's like, well, this is the Blofeld at the top. I think Telly Savalas is great and he's my favorite Blofeld, but I wouldn't go into Spectre being like, there's no way that you're gonna top Telly Savalas. Kind of like, like it's not like Jack Nicholson. Like a lot of people went into Dark Knight being like, well, there's no way that he can top Jack Nicholson. I don't have that with any of the previous Blofelds.
Yeah, I mean, all the actors are doing different things. There's no real, like, set foundation for who that character is. He just kind of alters depending on what the movie needs him to be, so...
Yeah, he gains and loses facial scars and earlobes and
yeah.
Sometimes he's dressed as a woman.
Yeah, so I mean, if anyone's going to set a foundation, it's probably going to be Christoph Waltz, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm going to be really disappointed if that's not who it turns out to be.
I'm really disappointed if he does turn out to be Blofeld and then he dies. He has to make it past one movie.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And I think it would be weird if he came back as Blofeld and Craig didn't come back as Bond.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Although based on, every single time he shows up in the books, he's basically a completely different character.
Yeah.
So, they could totally change up the acting.
So I guess the movies are accurate in that way, if nothing else.
Yeah, well, at least in the books they say it's plastic surgery, but he's written different in all three of them, too. Like, he's, losing his sanity across the three books. But, but yeah, no, I think the big thing rewatching Skyfall, because I think it's a great James Bond movie, I just think it's weirdly placed for Craig's James Bonds. It really feels like somebody's first James Bond movie, not their third James Bond movie.
Yeah, like you very easily could have gotten the same Casino Royale effect with just this. We didn't need the other two necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could have not rebooted. This could.
Yeah, you could have. You could have just kept this as the end, as the start of Craig's years right after Brosnan finished.
Yeah. But I think it's great. I think it's more interestingly directed than you, or more stylistically directed than you give it credit for.
That's fair. I don't know. It's tough for me to decide between which one's better as far as Skyfall and Casino Royale are concerned, but I do still think Casino's more memorable.
Yeah, I wonder if that's because we were both just younger when we saw it and sort of imprinted more.
That may be fair. Adele's song is also something that's really memorable and really good.
It's brilliant. It's one of my favorites.
It's one of the best James Bond songs ever.
I think it won an Oscar, didn't it?
It did, yeah. Although it wasn't up against real stiff competition, so...
Well, and there was discussion that she might not even get it because it has the James Bond theme in it.
Yeah.
So there was discussion on whether it counts as an original song or not, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, of course.
But yeah, no, I love the song. The song does that thing where like it's about the movie, you just don't realize it yet.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course the opening cinematic really helps with that after you rewatch it.
Oh yeah, that everything in that means something, and you don't know it till you've already seen the movie.
It summarizes the whole thing. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. I really like that opening sequence too.
Yeah.
And I guess, one of the things that really sets the Craig opening sequences apart is he's in all of them.
Yeah, he is.
James isn't in any of the previous openings, I don't think.
No, Brosnan is in some of his. I don't think Dalton ever is. Roger Moore is. I know that. I don't think Connery is.
I don't think Connery is.
I do know for a fact that Roger Moore at least has a little bit of screen time in each one of his openings, but I don't remember about Dalton. I don't think he does.
I know he doesn't in Living Daylights. I can't stand the song "The License to Kill," so
neither can I. Yeah.
So I kind of always skip it. All I know is that at the end of the song, there's a camera, and we zoom in on the lens, and the movie starts. Because I just skipped to the end of the song.
It's a cool visual, if nothing else.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I don't know. I really like Skyfall.
Yeah, me too.
And it's held up. Sometimes you go see a movie in theaters, and you're like, that was great. And you come back to it later, and it's not as good. I think Skyfall is just as good as when I first saw it.
Yeah, and it never loses its thrill. Like, the action scenes never mean anything less.
Yeah. Well, and it is a movie that, like, I feel like every time I watch it, I pick up a little bit more, or, something like that.
Yeah, it's also a really great movie to show people who don't necessarily like James Bond. Like, every time someone says I want to get into the franchise, I hand them this, Casino, Living Daylights, and what's it called? The Spy Who Loved Me.
Yeah, I think Skyfall would be a great um, introduction to the series.
Yeah,
Casino 2. The problem with Casino is that it's followed by Quantum of Solace.
yeah, exactly. Although the great thing about Bond movies is that you don't necessarily have to watch all of them to be a fan.
Well, yeah, I don't know. With Spectre coming out, I'm curious to see how important Quantum of Solace is, and if people have to watch it.
Yeah, we'll see. Because the trailers aren't painting it like a sequel. It just feels like it's a standalone thing that are building.
It's just the fact that I know who Mr. White is. I'm like, oh no, Quantum of Solace might be really important.
Mr. White also looks really different in those trailers. Or maybe
he looks old. Like, he looks really old and like out of it. Like, maybe he's been beat up or he's been homeless for a while. Like, his eyes are bloodshot.
Yeah. I don't know what's up with that.
Which makes me think that maybe Spectre did get rid of Quantum. Like, this is where he is now.
Yeah, maybe so. Like maybe everything, the whole debacle with Quantum of Solace, it might be why Spectre's taken over.
Oh, that could be.
That could be interesting. I don't know. We'll see.
I really hope they don't do that thing that sometimes movies do, where they take public opinion into effect. I really hope that, like, we're not like, you tried to get water, you know? Really, you're going to make water a couple of cents more expensive?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the areas of meta commentary we don't need.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything else to say about. I'm sure there'll be something the second we stop recording. Though, I'll be like, oh, I meant to say this about Skyfall.
Yeah, that always happens. But no, we're both gonna go see Spectre probably tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it tomorrow.
Okay, I bought my ticket. I just gotta see if my friend's coming with me or not.
Yeah, I'm taking my little brother. This will be his first in theaters James Bond film.
Oh, cool. Okay. So hopefully it's good.
Yeah, hopefully. It's weird. I don't know if people are being respectful, which I highly doubt, or maybe Skyfall's really bad, or maybe Spectre's really bad. I don't know. I haven't heard anything. It was released a week ago in England.
Yeah, it's been out for almost 2 weeks now in England.
Yeah, I haven't heard any buzz.
The English reviews have been really, really high, and then the American ones have been a little bit more hit or miss. So I guess we'll see.
Oh, see, I haven't even seen like general consensus of reviews. Like I have no idea what people's opinions are. Or even like the idea of like, well, I kind of liked it, or I kind of didn't like it.
It's going to be weird. I feel like it's going to have an awkward legacy because it seems like no one's on the exact same page. Lots of people love it, lots of people hate it, lots of people are in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. We've had Bond films like that before. I mean, that's kind of what Dalton's films are.
Yeah, exactly.
And
so we'll see.
Her Majesties.
Although I think that's a movie that just doesn't get enough credit as it is.
Well, and kind of. Like, because there's also the people that have gone back and reappraised it. Like, I feel like within the Bond community, its star is rising. But I still think public perception is that it's... which maybe that's what this is. Like, maybe Bond fans will really like Spectre, and not Bond fans will like it less. I don't know. Or vice versa. Like, they could do really weird stuff, and we're like, that's not James Bond. And everybody else is like, this is brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I'm excited to see it. Hopefully it doesn't like make anything about Quantum or Casino worse. Like, I want it to build and not retcon. Because I had weird reservations before Skyfall, because with the trailer I was like, it kind of feels like James Bond and Silva might be brothers, and M might be their mom, and like I was worried that they were going to do something really dumb like that. Yeah. And they didn't. So that makes me hope that, like, I really hope Blofeld's not like his dad or something. Yeah, like, there's a whole thing about someone tying into his past. Hopefully that's not Blofeld, but we'll see.
Well, if Christoph Waltz is Blofeld, it will be him. Because he's like Hans Obenhauser, who's, in the books at least, he's the guy that took care of James Bond after the Avalanche accident.
Right.
Which, as we didn't mention, they changed how Bond's parents died.
Oh yeah, they don't really talk a lot about it in Skyfall. Although, isn't this like the first time we really mention his origin in the movies at all?
No. I think I
I don't
know.
remember his parents coming up in any of the other movies.
I know there's one where they mention it's Goldeneye definitely mentions that his parents died in a climbing accident.
Oh, okay.
And I want to say On Her Majesty's Secret Service mentions it, but I don't know why I think that. But it has been brought up before. They change it here. Oh, and we didn't really mention. I love that Skyfall is a like a switcheroo. Like it sounds like, and they kind of build it up like it was like maybe like a failed mission or something like that. Which is something that like I kind of forget when I rewatch it. Like going into it, it's like, what is Skyfall? And then when he has that psych evaluation, it's he says Skyfall, and I was like, is it a failed mission? Like, what is it? And that's his home, and I was like, that's a really kind of clever twist.
Yeah, and I mean, the misdirection also doesn't hurt the movie on rewatches. Like, when he says Skyfall in that context, it still makes sense.
Yeah, well, and I think it's because they don't, like, beat you over the head with it. Like, it's not like when Moneypenny comes and sees him, she's like, what is Skyfall? And he's like, I don't want to talk about it. Like, it's just that one little throwaway. But yeah, no, I'm really excited to see Spectre tomorrow. And I'm interested to see what of these three films gets pulled into that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. When it comes out, I'm pretty sure I'll do a review. I'm not sure if you'll do one on your channel, but maybe you, me, and Captain Logan might do like a spoiler cast on it.
Yeah, I think that's the plan.
Okay. I'm not exactly sure because I know Cap's really busy these days. But if he gets to see it, then that's definitely in.
Yeah, he's too busy for us now. He's got.
We'll just do it by ourselves and hack the channel.
Yeah. Like this one. He didn't authorize us to put this video up. We hacked in.
Exactly.
I sent him a USB stick, and he foolishly put it in his computer, and now I have complete control.
And when you open the program from the USB stick, it's a map of Eric's house that helps you guide yourself to his laptop and upload the video.
Yeah. Well, and there's like a graphic of like his computer like moving and morphing, trying to fight against my control, but it doesn't work.
And there's orange and blue electric lights that represent Cap and Eric doing battle in the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
It's great. That should be a movie. Anyway.
It was called Age of Ultron. And then Cap's gonna break apart and hide himself in the internet.
And then he comes back as Dan Torrey the Vision.
There is no central hub for the internet, just to let you know that. Of all the things that work in that movie, that is not one of them.
Yeah, and I mean, I love the movie. It's still my favorite superhero movie. But yeah, there's weird things about it.
Well, I mean, Skyfall has that too. It's one of those things that I just give movies. No, it doesn't make any sense. No, that's not how computers work. It's no one knows how computers work.
Yeah, and how exciting would it be to just stare at a black screen with some command prompts?
Yeah, I mean, that is the argument. Is like, well, we don't really want to just see, like, the guy who has to sit there for 3 days coding.
Exactly.
I don't remember what movie it is, but there's some movie that does my favorite, like, riff on that thing where it's like, how long do you need? 3 days. You have 4 minutes.
Oh, wow. That's hilarious. Okay, anyway.
All right. We should go.
Yeah, thanks everybody for watching. Let us know what you think of the movies in the comments. Eric, thanks for joining me on this massive video.
On Cap's channel.
On Cap's channel. It's like 3 hours long.
Yeah, let's give it to him. He can edit it.
Yeah, there you go. All right, anyway.
Bye, everyone.